Hey, Andrew.
Yes, Stephen?
You know how we romanticize the days of going out to our local video store and sifting through endless amounts of movies, searching for our favorite films, and maybe even finding some hidden gems?
Oh, yes, I know it all too well. That used to be my favorite thing to do. Unfortunately, everything is online now.
Well, what if I told you that there was a place online where you could get some of them same thrills as going to the video store?
Are you talking about Orbit DVD?
I knew you knew what I was talking about. Orbit DVD is located in Asheville, North Carolina, and online with OrbitDVD.com, they bring you everything your physical media heart desires.
Yeah, they have an awesome website that stays up to date with the latest releases from all of your favorite boutique labels as well as studio releases. Not only do they carry American labels such as Criterion Collection, Severin Films, Vinegar Syndrome, and Warner Archive, but they get routine shipments on imports from companies such as 88 Films, Arrow Video, Imprint, and so much more.
And with the option to sell or trade your used copies for cash or store credit, they really bring that video store vibe to you. So go to OrbitDVD.com and stock up on your Blu-rays.
And tell them Chasing Labels sent you.
Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Chasing Labels. I am your host, Stephen Billings. And with me, as always, is your other host, Andrew Cabral. How you doing, man?
Doing good, Stephen. Yes, we are back here once again. This is for spine number 91, as Stephen was reminding me briefly before we got on I was gonna say on camera, on air, online. I don't know what the proper term is.
All of them count.
Yeah, I guess all of them mean all the same thing in the context of what we're doing. But yeah, we are back once again, and this time we did have a super special guest that we did do an interview for, but we did have some technical issues. Stephen, what were they?
Well, I'll say this. Let's go back. Let's do a weather report. Let's go back a few weeks ago when we recorded this, and of course, at the top we talked to the wonderful Alexandra Heller-Nicholas. She was amazing. She's an author. She's a film critic. She does a little bit of everything. Of course, she's a contributor. She's done many commentaries, and so she was wonderful. And unfortunately, the conversation got cut a little short. We tried to keep it going, but the internet would not work with me.
Yeah, it would not cooperate. And what is the sad part of it all is we were right there towards the end of our conversation. Like we were within
maybe 10 minutes,
within reaching distance, like 10 minutes left. Maybe we were settling towards the landing.
Yeah, we were almost there. I had a couple more things I wanted to talk about, and we would probably been done. But that's just how it goes. I mean, it's the first time we've really had this. I mean, we've lost an episode before. We don't want to bring that up again, but we haven't typically had issues like this. So it sucks when it happens. But the weather was causing there to be glitches in the internet, so it just wasn't happening that night.
Right.
But one thing I do want to bring up, that kind of, I guess you could say, kind of puts a close out of that conversation in a way, is I never got a chance to bring up in our conversation one of her latest books that I have right here, 1,000 Women in Horror. Really cool book. I haven't had a chance to go through the whole thing yet, but it's a great reference book to all different, all actresses and filmmakers throughout history in film. Here's one right here. Just turn right to it. Raw, which is something she did
rather
some work
recent.
On. Yeah.
We talked a little bit kind of in the later part where that didn't get recorded about her contribution to the Blu-ray of Raw that came out in Australia, actually.
Yeah.
That I actually have on my shelf somewhere. Now that I look off into the distance. And coincidentally that you said that, like she actually contributed to that movie. And she interviewed the director at like a festival.
Yeah, we got that recording. So
we did. See, I don't even know what we got, what we didn't get.
Yeah, because when I left the conversation trying to figure out what was going on, it still was recording your part of it. So we still got you and Alexander Heller. So there will be parts of this conversation near the end where it's just Andrew and Alexandra just talking about film a little bit. So it kind kind of goes away from the natural conversation we were having to more of a just you, Andrew, and her, just talking about movies. So it's abrupt, but it's still talking film, and they're still having a good conversation. So we apologize that it doesn't, when we apologize to Alexandria, sorry it didn't finish properly, but I think there's still a lot of great stuff in this conversation.
Oh yeah, it
For
went for over an hour already, so there's
yeah,
plenty
yeah,
of content there.
yeah,
Fantastic guest, incredibly well versed in the specialty that she gets
yeah.
into and all kinds of stuff. Like we've said during it, if you own or have been collecting a lot of boutique labels over the last several years, you probably have her work already in your collection. And
Tons of it,
may not even know it.
tons of it. So with that said, here is the conversation with Miss Alexandra Heller-Nicholas. So with us this week is award-winning author, just everything, author, writer, visual essay contributor to so many of the labels that we love, and that is Alexandra Heller-Nicholas. How you doing?
Hi, Tim. I'm good. How are you guys?
Oh, just wonderful. We're glad to get you on. I've been talking to you for a little bit, and I'm glad to finally have you on here. I'm a big fan. Love the work you do. With your visual essays or your audio commentaries, and the work you've done with like Fangoria and things like that. I just big fan. So
Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice.
Yeah,
yes.
it's been I feel like ever since the beginning of this podcast, we've known of you and a lot of other people within your realm. Like
Mhm.
Kat Ellinger, we knew from the very beginning, and you just the names keep showing up so much. So for those of you listening, chances are if you've been listening to this podcast, if you've been collecting these boutique labels for the last, couple of years, chances are you know who Alexandra Heller-Nicholas is. And if you don't, hopefully you will now.
Oh, you're gonna know her now. We're gonna get into we're gonna
I'm
you're
not
gonna
going to
know.
shut up. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what we've had talkers on, and they always like to apologize. And I said, you're here to talk. Just
Yeah,
don't worry
Anything
about
for
that.
dead air. Yep.
it's better
Yeah,
to talk than not to
please.
talk, when it comes to
Yes,
this. It
there'll be
makes our
times
job
when we're
easier.
yeah there'll be times when me and Andrew are talking Blu-ray announcements, and Andrew will get like fixated on reading something on his screen, and I'm like, Andrew, you were just talking and you stopped. I'm like, you can't just do that.
Mid-sentence,
Yeah, and then I'm
He
like,
was having a
dude,
moment. He was just having a little
Well,
moment. Andrew,
yeah,
you're allowed your
yeah.
moments.
thank you. Thank you.
It's
Glad
all
glad
right.
somebody acknowledges it.
Don't encourage him. Don't encourage him. But of course, yeah, wonderful to have you here. And so in general, how you doing? How's everything going right now with you? I know it's the middle of the day in Australia.
It is. It's the weekend here, so I think for you guys it's Friday evening, but for me it's well into Saturday. So yeah, I'm in weekend mode. I'm chilling. I'm
Well,
relaxed.
I can see with the ears you're partying. You're
Oh,
partying.
right.
Partying.
These are
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
these are the weekend headphones. You know,
I like
I've
them.
got my
Yeah.
work headphones off, got the weekend headphones on.
Nice, nice. So, what's a typical way? Do you have a lot of work that you have to work through the weekend in usually, or do you usually actually have some days off?
No, I've been working from home or working for myself easily for God over 20 years now. So I'm very strict on weekends
Yeah,
and not working outside of work hours. So I have a very rigid, very strongly policed because if you don't, you just don't stop working. I think people think
yeah,
that if you work from home, it's like a kind of holiday. I guess that's all changed since lockdown. But for me, yeah, like I've got a very long sort of decades plus history of knowing that, yeah, you need weekends. You need to
yeah,
make a point. I think even in my work email signature, it's like I don't answer emails on weekends and I'm in an Australian time zone. So if I don't reply, don't take it personally. But yeah,
yeah,
you have
yeah,
to be your own cop. All cops are
yeah,
bad, but you have to be your own cop. I don't know
yeah.
how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I've noticed this. This is a thing I've noticed with some of the other people we've scheduled with, had on the show, and yeah, sometimes they'll be like, "Yeah, I can only do things at this time because there's family time. There's
Yep.
so a lot of times people only will want to schedule during what they consider work hours and not any other time. So and we get it.
Mm.
I'm doing for me. I mean, a lot of our availability to do the show is about my time because Andrew, I have a family, so and
Mhm.
Andrew's a single guy, so he's kind of got a little bit more time, he's flexible. Me, I'm not. So now I kind of have to do it basically in the times I would sleep is when we
Yeah.
got to do our
Yep.
show.
Yep.
So that's we do what we love this stuff, and luckily my wife is supportive and allows me to spend some time down here in the basement doing this thing. And but but yes, so please, as we always like to do, we like to go back to the beginnings and talk about where that love of film started for you. Did it start from when you were first born? Because I believe that's where it has to start. Like, where were you born?
So I'm from Melbourne,
Yeah.
which is right down the bottom of Australia. It's just above. There's a little island down the bottom called Tasmania. I'm not from Tasmania, just slightly above that. So we're the second biggest city outside of
Yeah.
Sydney, and we're better than Sydney. I'm allowed to say that. We have a kind of LA, New York thing going on, but it's very parochial. And I found out just a few years ago, before my mother died, she mentioned in passing that I was 7 weeks old when I saw The Exorcist in the cinema, which
Ooh.
I obviously didn't remember. But she said, "Yeah, do you think that's got anything to do with your interest in horror?" And it's like, I think it might.
Well,
Like,
it makes
yeah.
me feel better that you saw something that traumatic that early and it didn't mess you up, because my daughter's already seen some crazy shit.
My son too. Yep.
Yeah, so because I gotta watch stuff for the show, so I'm putting on these like really like I think I even put one of your films that you did a work on, Thriller, was playing
Hey,
on in the
wow.
room with her in the room, and I'm like, I'm sorry, girl, this is what I'm watching.
My son had seen all of Marble Hornets before he was
Mm.
talking, and I think Slender Man was like one of his first 10 words, and I'm
Ooh, that's
oddly
a good
proud
one.
of that.
That's a good one to really
Yep.
just mess you up. Yeah,
Yep, yep,
yeah.
yep. But look, I mean, I come from a very working class background. My parents didn't have a lot of money, and they were sort of voracious consumers of art, both high and low brow. And it's something that I don't think I appreciated till I was much older. But we would go to free art exhibitions, we would go to free museums, and we would watch a huge amount of movies, just tons and tons of movies. So I grew up, in retrospect, which was what quite a rigorous film boot camp. And I hated it when I was a kid. My friends were watching like Bachelor Party and Police Academy, and I wanted to watch those films. But no, I have to watch a Hitchcock marathon with my mum, and
Ugh,
tons of musicals, tons of westerns. My dad was really into stuff like Rafifi. I remember that was one of the
mm.
first films I watched with my dad all the way through. Was Jules Dassin's Rafifi. And when I was a kid, it's like, I want to do a Nightmare on Elm Street, marathon with my friends. I don't want to watch these old movies. But yeah, in retrospect, it was a gift. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very hugely, I mean, very much the cinephile, and not just film, but the kind of consumer of books and other kind of music and painting, all kinds of different art. I definitely get directly from my parents, and a very rigid regime of exposure to an amazingly diverse kind of world of art from a really young age.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one thing that I think watching, I mean, and this isn't necessarily for all films that are older films, as we would call them, but like I'd say for the most part, because the whole fast editing happened a little later on, and I think it would be good for kids to watch these, especially these days, watch older films, because it teaches patience and
Yeah,
teaches like paying attention to the story and the characters and the things that are happening more than trying to get to the point. Like I feel like a lot of kids they're trying to, it's like they're trying to get the movie done, like, and I'm
yeah,
like, or they're trying to figure it out before it's happened, and I'm like, like just let the movie follow the way the story's been told. Let the movie take you on the journey. Like don't,
Mm.
and that's
The attention
yeah,
spans are shorter
yeah.
now. I just think from every perspective, not even just young people. I think just our whole culture and society is so fast
A lot of
paced.
information coming
big
at us
time.
all the time. Yeah.
Yep,
Especially here in the US. I think the benefit of us, having a lot of guests from, other geographical areas of the world is it's different cultures have different sense of the way in which their society moves. The US, everything is extremely fast paced depending on where you live. If you live on an East Coast, urban area and a West Coast urban area, it's fast paced, always moving. More rural areas, much slow down. But when it comes to entertainment's gotta keep you going,
Well,
gotta
I think
keep your heart
everybody's
rate going.
inundated with entertainment. It's the, I mean, I hate to use this word distraction, but a lot of
Mm,
it's a distraction. I mean,
yeah.
that's why it's important to really try to, that's why we like these labels and things. Like I feel like we're getting a nice curation, and you're getting kind of to look past a lot of noise. Yeah.
And it kind of encourages an immersion,
Yeah.
which is what I like about doing this work from the other side of the fence. It's, you can completely immerse yourself in the world of a film.
Hmm.
And that's almost the opposite of what we get elsewhere, which is a kind of surface brush over a
Yep.
lot of content. And home entertainment's almost the opposite, where it's like a deep, 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 deep dive that is wholly immersive into one text.
Yeah.
It's
No,
difficult, I would say it's difficult to immerse yourself wholly into one thing at one time in one place. I think that's why, the cinematic experience is rather unique, or theatrical experience, or going to a Broadway show or a musical and stuff like that. Like, all of that is so unique because you're so immersed in it. It's difficult to replicate that at home.
Big
Um,
time.
depending on your setup in your area, I'm fortunate enough to where, and I've mentioned it many times here on the show, where I watch films late at night. I find it very comforting to watch films past midnight when there's no one around you to distract you. It's interesting watching an Alfred Hitchcock film at 3 in the morning. Now that you mentioned Hitchcock, because it's quite an immersive journey. Watching North by Northwest at 3 a.m. is different than watching it at 3 in the afternoon with the sun blaring through your windows.
yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that that's something that we've talked about a lot on the show, is just, um, trying to get people back to caring about the film's past, just kind of like an escapism.
Yeah.
And I think that's how it was, growing up. I felt like movies were still something that, people cared about a little bit more. I mean, I think it's just the fact that it's so much of it now that I think it gets taken for granted, a lot. And but going back to your beginnings, what are some of the films that really were kind of like the foundational things that started getting you into like wanting to learn more about like the behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff?
I was really lucky in that the school that I went to I'm not sure what the American equivalent is. So my final years of high school, the last two final years of high school, um, we had a film studies course.
Hmm.
And we just had an amazing teacher. And again, like, I'm old enough that some of the stuff we watched was on video. The old trolleys that they would reel into classrooms with the big tube
Oh yeah.
TVs, but we had an amazing teacher who was really insistent on film. So I saw Citizen Kane for the first time on film, on a film
Wow,
print.
that's
And
fan.
she was really formative for me. She was a really her name was Claire. She was a really hugely formative influence. So things like The Draftsman's Contract by Peter Greenaway, um, Little Murders, the Alan Arkin
Mm,
film.
yep.
There's yeah, quite random in a way. Citizen Kane was obviously quite a big one, seeing that on a film print. Things like The Blue Angel. So yeah, stuff that I saw at school. But in having this teacher who was so fastidious about showing us things on film, which, when you
Yeah.
think now, for a high school to be showing these kinds of movies on film is insane, right?
I
So
would I
I
would
was
I would
gifted,
assume you were lying if somebody
right?
told me that. Yeah.
Well, it's like,
Right.
yeah, how do you
And
even
she was like, "You're either gonna watch Citizen Kane on film, or you're not gonna watch it at all."
yeah, how
Mm,
does one even acquire, film now? In terms of, like,
Right.
trying to get a film print of Citizen Kane is probably more
Mhm.
difficult now than it was, then. Now they pretty much just show you the DVD or the Blu-ray, or, I mean, if you have
Absolutely.
access to the 4K, go with that, I guess.
Yeah, so
Um,
I was really lucky, like, hugely lucky, and this was just a public school. This was just, the local high school. So it wasn't like a particularly fancy school or an art school or anything like that. This was just sort of the school that was free, that was in my area.
I kind of want
Um,
to. I kind of. I've. Not that I'm like. I'm not an academic. I'm not like you, Alexandra. I don't have film study. I don't have any degrees or anything. But I have thought about the fact that I love movies so much that I would love to share it with younger people. And I've always thought about being like Jack Black in School of Rock, and going into some school somewhere and taking over a classroom and then start teaching them about movies and getting them all into movies. And then we make a movie together. And that's just been
that's awesome. Look,
I know that should. Yeah, it
sorry.
should be a movie. It should be a movie.
I'm very elastic, I guess, when it comes to the subject of sort of formal education. When it comes to film theory and film history at least. So I, as I
Yeah.
said, I come from a working class background, so going to university was a really big deal for me and for my family.
Yeah.
So I did my master's, I did a PhD, um, but yeah, like I don't want to sound anti-intellectual, but
No.
for me personally, yeah, it was important for me to get those things. But I call myself a recovering academic. Um, and I find that like I don't work in universities anymore. I was quite happy to leave them, to be honest. I don't know about other places, but in Australia, it's a pretty toxic industry. And I mean, I guess because I come from a journal, like a film journalism or journalism background, more broadly, I was sort of like I'm not getting to talk to the people that I want to talk to
Yeah.
about film. I don't want to talk to 60-year-old professors. I want to talk to 16-year-old kids about
Yeah,
this
I mean,
stuff. So
60-year-olds are already got their mind made up about a lot of things at
right,
this point.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I
Very
found,
true.
for me personally, universities were very restrictive, and
Yeah.
I don't regret it,
Yeah,
but I
that's
think a lot of my own kind of class baggage had to do with me, and
yeah. And
me
I
kind of
noticed
pursuing
that.
that track. Yeah,
On your website, which is for people who want to know more about you and more about all the archive of your work, is the bluelenses.com, right?
that's right.
That's right. Okay, I got it right. And it does say recovering academic, and I'm glad you brought that up because to define that, it could be interpreted in several different ways, but it is very interesting how, I mean, we see this all the time. There are different, I don't know, schools of thought, areas, breakdowns, whatever, of cinema and all this kind of stuff. Some people treat it as this intellectual ideal thing where, they get very studious about it, very elite about it, where like only certain films should be recognized as great or recognized with certain, accommodation and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's where the whole academic of it all, like you were saying, the whole studious of it, when you talk about film theory and breakdowns and all this kind of stuff, you kind of you elevate it almost up to a pedestal level, and you forget about all of the richness that's
Yep.
that's behind it all, or that's left that you're not studying. And I feel like, academically, when people go to film school, which everyone can take their own path towards cinema, but I think film school and kind of formal education in and of itself, just as a whole, is incredibly stunting when it comes to one's, I think, growth as a person. There's a lot of things they don't teach you in school that you probably need to know, and that can also be said about movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, I think for filmmaking, like to go to a practical, to go to film school, that's one thing, and that's something that I've not done. So I'm not talking about that side of things per se. I'm
Mm,
talking about like the film history, film theory, film kind of the more kind of critical engagement. Um, yeah, I mean, and it was really formative for me. I had hugely influential lecturers and tutors most of who are still friends or I'm in contact with. Um, but I mean, yeah, for me personally, it was really important to avoid what I see in some people, which is this sort of restrictive idea of like, film is not for you, cinema is not for you. And I don't see, I sort of passionately rally against that. Like I will put in the same amount of passion and thought to, a straight to video release from Vinegar Syndrome as I would something, like a more highbrow art
Yeah.
film. Like
mm,
I just can't, I cannot tolerate that kind of and it's usually very class driven, and it's usually very ego driven, which I think why people like Kat Ellinger, Lee Gambin, um, obviously Kayla Janice is like a really key person here. There's so many people that I'm not mentioning,
Oh, yeah, of course. There's a ton. Yeah.
but that it's about opening a film up. And it's like, hey, come and play in the muck of this with me.
Yeah.
And that spirit is beautiful. And I think it's really there's passion and there's intelligence and there's joy. And the opposite of that is when somebody's being very performative and it's like, let me tell you about what the things that you don't know, like this sort of patronizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately a lot of that is governed by university accreditations that I think are kind of, having a doctor in front of my name, I can kind of say it's kind of bullshit. Like
Yeah.
for me personally, I don't know. I don't mean, yeah, I'm conscious that I might sound anti-intellectual. I'm not anti-intellectual, I'm anti-asshole.
Mm,
Well, I was gonna say,
yeah.
what you got to understand about that kind of attitude, being an asshole like that, about being elitist like that. What it does is it turns people off of the thing that you want to teach them about. Like, people
Yeah.
don't like people trying to tell them what they
100%.
what they should like or don't like. They
Yep.
want to be able to discover it for themselves, and the only way to do that is to give them as much of it as possible and let them decide for themselves. And that hurts the whole thing. And even not even just in the academic, learning about the history of things, but also in filmmaking itself. The more we try to teach people what we think filmmaking should be like, I think it's good to learn the basics, but then from there you got to let them be creative and let them make mistakes
Yeah.
and make their own choices. Because even things that as we always say, film is subjective. So it's even what we think as my personal taste might be the wrong move in a story or something. Years later, that thing could be reevaluated, and people are like, what, that was really awesome. Like, it's just ever changing. There's so many of these things coming out on physical media that people are like, reviving, and now they're saying, well, maybe this was a damn masterpiece, and like that's the kind of, it's
Yeah.
unfortunately we can't be open like that all the time, and
Mhm.
sometimes films are not made at the right time, and
Yeah.
they just need time. And that's why I tell
Mhm.
people when I hate to shout him out here and make him feel bad, but friend of mine, Dan Skip Allen,
Mm.
he's a film critic in Florida, and when he's like, he really loves a movie, he wants to give it like a high rating. I'm like, dude, calm down. It's like, give it some time. Don't give it 5 stars after the first time you watched it, man. Like, calm down, like, so it's like, I think everything needs some
There's a lot
seasoning,
of
needs some
passion.
time,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
movies are ever evolving, I think. I think we're as generations go on and as like people grow, society changes, reevaluation happens, past films get looked at in different contexts and different lights and different interpretations. I think we've seen that a lot when it comes to our modern culture. A lot of what was acceptable to be put on film back in the 1950s, let's just say, is something that's probably not acceptable now. We have to discuss why that is. We have to
Yeah.
discuss, certain racial things, certain misogynistic things, certain, interpretations of what was going on at the time back then, and maybe how it relates to now, maybe how it doesn't relate to now. And I mean, I think a lot of those things are open, and a lot of those people, unfortunately, a lot of people don't want to have those conversations because they want to be stuck in terms of one interpretation of the movie at the way
Yeah.
it's always been looked at. Something like Gone with the Wind, has gotten reevaluations over time in terms of being kind of glorifying certain eras of the Civil War that probably shouldn't be glorified, but then people get caught up in, oh, but it's a magical film from in Technicolor from the 30s, and it's such a classic, and we can have both discussions and
I
interpret it different
agree.
ways.
I agree so strongly. I feel really passionate about this. I think that we live in a time, unfortunately, where there is an increase in um, a film can be dismissed as quote unquote problematic as a way of shutting down conversation.
Hmm.
Um, and to me, that's the worst thing that can happen. What I think is really important is that films can be both. I mean, I hate terms like this, but these sort of reductive, it can be problematic and progressive at the same time. And that's why I think directors like Brian De Palma, Dario Argento are so interesting, because you look at some of their films and some of the stuff is really progressive. And then some of the stuff, you're kind of doing some pretty intense, rhetorical gymnastics to sort of
Hmm.
defend stuff.
Yeah.
And that's okay. A film can be both. A filmmaker can be both. We can have those conversations. It's not a fucking football. Sorry, can I swear? It's not a
Yeah.
football
Of course
team,
you can.
right? You don't need to sort of, you don't need to barrack. You don't need to be, yeah, you don't need to go for filmmakers like they're a sports team.
Yeah.
You can love their films and say, you know what, I can't reconcile this aspect of their work. And I'm not going to try to, because it sits poorly with me, and I'm okay with that. And it's not about, and like you said, it's about opening conversation up rather than shutting it down. And a lot of the films that I deal with, especially, I've written a couple of books on rape revenge film, and I often get called upon to do
Hmm.
commentaries, video essays, and things for films that kind of deal not just even rape revenge, but things that deal with gendered violence. And it's a really difficult thing to talk about, and these films are so important to get those conversations going. And more often than not, these films are precisely like I've said, that they have stuff in them that's really like, oh shit, that's a bit much. That
Yeah.
doesn't sit well with me. But at the same time, they might have things that are progressive. And we just need to develop a kind of a critical palette, I guess, or a pretty critical toolbox to be able to say a film can be two things at once.
Yeah,
And we don't
exactly.
have to kind of reject it, but we don't have to embrace it. We need to sort of relax into it, I guess, and just sit with our tensions and sit with those. And sometimes it's hypocrisy, like, I mean, there's some filmmakers that I cannot separate the art from the artist. I cannot. And I've gone on very difficult journeys with some filmmakers who were hugely influential for me, whose work I can no longer watch. But
Yeah.
there are other people who I know, are objectively terrible people, and I just don't have that problem with.
Yeah.
And yes, it's absolutely hypocritical, and all I can do is sit with that hypocrisy,
Yeah, I mean, it's a choice.
and just sort
Everybody's
of
got choice.
recognize it and identify it for what it is. And it's like, yeah, I'm a hypocrite and I
Yeah.
can't defend it, but that's,
There
I'd
are
rather do that than try to sort of justify an objectively horrible person who's making movies. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
there's an open way I feel that you can both acknowledge a filmmaker as being great at their craft, but also being a terrible person at the same time,
Well, and I think
or
it's
doing terrible
also
things.
yeah,
And
and I
and
think
I
it
think it's personal. Sometimes that bleeds through into how
yeah.
you watch a text, and sometimes you can suspend that, and I think it's more intuitive. I don't think that's an intellectual process. I think that's just something that you bring from your own life to the experience of watching a given movie.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think it's also important to remember that tons of other people are making these movies too. It's not, yeah, the director is usually the main person that gets the credit for everything on a movie, but there's actors, there's behind the scenes people, editors and things that worked really hard on something that they all believed in, and that's the thing, that you got to also remember too, that you're not yeah.
100%. I have a
Mhm.
friend that calls Rosemary's Baby William Castle's Rosemary's Baby.
Nice.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. It's the same way
Yeah.
we feel about the physical media. That's why we bring, people like you on, people, just contributors, because not only are we buying them for the movies, but the people behind the releases. The friends from Radiance, you and Cat Ellinger, and just tons of Chris O'Neill. We just recently had just people like that are what make these things extra better. And we know
Mm.
knowing that you guys are behind them just makes it more enjoyable. And so yeah, I mean, like you said,
That's awesome.
yeah, I'm glad that we just want you guys to know that, because I think
That's
Right.
lovely. That's
it's
really
important for
nice.
everybody. It's important for everybody to be reminded that the work that they're doing is important. And
Yeah, it's very more noticed now, I think, than ever before, because I think there's more recognition now, and I feel like there should be more recognition. Um, I think on our most recent episode, I was hoping that, cover artists get more recognition. Like, tell me who did this cover art, this original cover art. Some companies say it, some don't. You kind of have to do your own research on that. A lot of it comes down to them having to promote their own work, which a
Yep.
lot of freelance people have to do. They have to, be their own marketers, I guess, through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever the
yeah,
case may be, websites. Um, what is interesting is, uh, touching upon, just going back a little bit, you've written a couple of books about the whole rape revenge thing that happens in a lot of films, horror films. Um, what is so interesting about that, it being such a hot, I guess, say hot button issue, I would say, with a lot of people and a lot of people discussing a lot of these films. What I find so interesting about kind of that whole concept and idea is it keeps recurring. Like, it's been around for decades.
It's been
And
around for centuries.
yeah, even
It's in the
centuries, you're
Bible.
right.
It's in the
yeah,
Bible.
it's in the
It's the
Yeah.
Bible.
Old
Yeah,
Testament. It's
I was just thinking
Boudica.
movie
Like,
wise.
it's a really almost primal
Yeah,
story.
and it's almost as
Um,
if, like, these, these entertainment, whether it be books, whether it be movies, TV, of course, um, why does it keep recurring? I mean, I like, instead of shutting down the discussion like we were talking about,
yeah.
because it's such a disturbing thing, opening up as to, like, why is it such a thing that's told in stories over and over again, and audience from every generation keep coming back to it, like you just said, for centuries. And
I think as far as sort of, I mean, I'm sort of paraphrasing like a lot of other critics that have, and academics and scholars who have written on this. I think one of the rape is a very useful tool to talk about other things. It's often employed. So if somebody, think about like an episode of Law and Order SVU or something like that. If somebody's murdered, it's terrible. If somebody's raped and murdered, it's worse. So rape is almost like a highlighter pen. And in terms of the kind of of telling a moral tale, rape is often employed to amplify a distinction between quite clear-cut differences between good and evil. Very, very simplistic terms, because sometimes it's appropriate to murder somebody. I'm not saying that I have, and I'm not saying you should, but you know what I mean? Like
No, I know what you mean.
there
Like
are
like
situations.
death wish, where his whole
Exactly.
family is killed in front of
yeah.
him, and then he's like, yeah.
Not something. You might steal a loaf of bread to feed your family, so
Yeah.
so theft isn't always morally bad. Rape is always bad. It's always bad. And
There's no accident there.
right.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
reason why it's you need to feed your family. So, it doesn't fit into that. So it's a very useful narrative device to be crude. And often it's employed as a kind of brute force moralizing tool. So
Yeah.
there's not necessarily there's not films that feature sexual violence aren't necessarily telling stories or having an opinion of or engaging with the discourse surrounding sexual violence, which is quite a weird thing to think about. Like it's such a blanket thing. And when we get to rape revenge, we have this, that kind of moral structure is in the name. There is a rape,
Yeah.
there is revenge.
Yeah, there's a built-in moral justification for the violence that
Yeah.
comes after this.
Exactly. But what I find so interesting is, I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these films, is that within that equation, the rape and revenge, there is an extraordinarily diverse ways, there is an extraordinary range of ways to address those issues, and to present them and to reflect on them. And, for better or for worse, rape revenge films, I think, are wanting to start a conversation, or whether consciously or not, they're starting conversations or prompting conversations about gendered violence that are desperately needed and that most of us avoid at most times. There's a myth about rape revenge films that that they're obviously that they're offensive. These are really challenging films to watch, and there are plenty that are really on the nose, like that are really kind of stinky in terms of their kind of overt exploitative intent.
Irreversible is pretty rough. Irreversible. It's not a revenge, but it's definitely well, I guess it is kind of a rape revenge.
Yeah. Irreversible is a great. I've got my Irreversible shirt on. Irreversible is a great example because it. What it does is so simple in that it takes the rape revenge equation and makes it revenge rape.
Yeah.
And we see that the mechanics of what is going on there, we see that in the recent straight cut of Irreversible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what that film does is, by simply flipping the story around, it forces us to address the issues of, what is the relationship of revenge to rape? What happens if we see the revenge first?
Mm-hmm.
How does that? So that's a really complicated film.
Yeah, does it change your perspective on the revenge? Like, does it feel more justified to, or is it still killing somebody still a bad thing?
And what I find so interesting about rape revenge is this, this highbrow, lowbrow distinction that we've talked about. We go back to, one of the earliest rape revenge films won an Oscar for Best Foreign Language Film, which is Virgin Spring by Ingmar Bergman.
Yeah.
Very close to that, the very first episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents is called Revenge, and it's a rape revenge story.
Yes,
we think of it, as being a horror thing, but westerns were doing rape revenge long before Last House on the Left or I Spit on Your Grave. There's a really deep, long tradition in westerns which are related to things like captivity narratives. Great films like The Bravados with Gregory Peck is an immediate one that comes to mind. So. Yeah, like the politics of a film isn't necessarily related to whether it's an exploitation film or a kind of highbrow art film or something in between, something like The Accused or Thelma and Louise, which play with the ideas of rape revenge. I don't think that they're straightforward rape revenge films, but they
Yeah.
play with they sort of tinker with the politics of it.
Yeah.
It's a really complicated area, and when I go to film festivals, or when I do public speaking things, um, I'm I used to be really surprised, and now I'm not, in that I always have people come up afterwards and say, "Look, I'm a survivor. I
Hmm.
really love these films. Is there something wrong with me?" So, I think that there's an assumption that a lot of people who are survivors are really, these are too much, and that's
Mm,
totally valid. But there
sure.
is a lot of people, and the one thing I really want to say is it's not just women.
Yeah.
And I've had men talk to me about this stuff that I know I've never talked to anybody else. And these are
Mm,
strangers, and I guess because I am a stranger.
Yeah.
But there are filmmakers. There are filmmakers who are survivors who make rape revenge films. So it's a really complicated film that I think is far too often, it's a textbook case of that. People rush, I don't like rape revenge films. They're really offensive. And it's like, well, yes, like I'm not going to argue with that. But it's like you're dealing with a whole broad spectrum of stuff here.
it's incredibly
Um,
nuanced. Unfortunately, as time has gone on, it's become incredibly close to real life. It's become incredibly contemporary. We just mentioned a few films that came out decades upon decades ago, but they're dealing with contemporary things because oftentimes film can be a reflection of our society. And unfortunately, these things like sexual violence, assault, rape, and all these things keep recurring within our society. And the art keeps reflecting that. But but society never seems to learn from it, really. If anything, things are worse now than ever before because there's so much more open discussion about it, really. Open discussion in the sense like every time someone comes out with an allegation of sexual assault or whatever the case may be from decades ago, that person's immediately attacked for a nuance of things like, why didn't you come out at the time? Why'd you wait so long? Why this and that? And it's like, and then you begin to realize no wonder why they didn't want to talk about this in the first place
of
because
course.
the discussion around it is so toxic and so awful, and it keeps recurring no matter the
Yeah.
decades. And you said it is not just specifically towards women, but also towards men, and it's more of a societal thing now than I think a specific gender thing. I don't know if that's accurate to
No, I
say.
think and that's cross cultural as well.
Yes.
Like I mean, I've seen rape revenge films from Japan, from Turkey, from all over the world. Really rich tradition in a lot of South American cinemas, national cinemas. Argentine rape revenge film is incredibly intense and incredibly
Mm.
interesting.
And
And the way that it sort of hooks into these sort of national contexts or these national discourses. Um, yeah, I mean, they're fantasy films. They're justice fantasies. That's
Yeah.
what these films are. And when you frame them like that, that actually becomes quite chilling.
Yeah.
It's like this is the only way that we can sort of, and I know BJ Colangelo, who's one of my favorite people in the world, also one of my favorite critics in the world. She wrote an incredible piece about rape revenge films and being a survivor, and it was precisely because of this. Films like Miss 45, I Spit on Your Grave. It was precisely because of this fantasy aspect, this revenge fantasy aspect, that helped her move on.
Yeah.
mm,
I was gonna
It's
say
and
it can be cathartic for people. It can be something that
yeah,
helps them feel like that they're seen and that their feelings are real, and
Yep.
it really does help people. I think of, you were
yeah.
talking about how there's films about rape that are not always about the revenge part of it, and one film you worked on, and I think Andrew picked it up at the same time I thought about it, was Outrage.
Oh, you saw me
Um,
pick it up? Yeah, I thought
yeah,
I was sneaky.
yeah,
Throwing up the goats for Ida Lupino.
I
yes,
know.
yes,
I
definitely,
love Ida Lupino. I'm trying to get all
yeah,
of her films, and I
yeah,
needed this
and
one
yeah,
because this is one I was missing.
this release was my introduction to the movie, and listening to your video essay, just fantastic film, and just that opening scene, the rape scene, is so chilling, and so
It's so ahead of its time. I
yeah,
mean,
way
it's
Mm.
ahead of its
just
time.
Talk about
extraordinary.
contemporary and just
Yep,
coming out, in 1950 of all the decades to
right.
come out. Where
And that's 10 years before the Virgin Spring.
yes,
Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
was
it's
even gonna say
insane. Like,
just
yeah,
to put it, societal, in a society context here in the U.S., the whole women's rights movement really wouldn't come around until at least another decade and a half, with the explosion of expression of rights in the '60s
mhm,
and into the '70s. So this was way ahead of its time.
yep.
Ida Lupino, just incredible work during her time. She made I don't know if Alexandra, you can probably say if she made women's pictures, but she made pictures about women, if
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
accurate to say.
they're retrospectively called women's pictures. I mean, and
Mhm.
also it's like, so, her first few films were very much social issues films,
Right.
focused on women. Like, so what, unwanted pregnancy, um, things like that. So very much focused on that kind of experience, and told with just extraordinary candor. I mean, when you think about the context that Outrage was made in, she wasn't allowed to use the word rape in the film. It's not there. And
Yeah.
yet she does it. It's like, and it's amazing. I do think that she often gets I don't think that she's a woman's filmmaker. I think that Outrage is actually quite radical, because Outrage is, for me, a very early example. I mean, it goes back to things like Jermaine Delac's The Seashell and the Clergyman. I've written on this elsewhere, but I think that women filmmakers have an extraordinary ability to tell stories about toxic masculinity, about men
Yeah.
and toxic masculinity. So, Lynn Ramsey's You Would Never Really Hear is like a really good recent example. It's not a horror
Oh yeah.
film, but I think that Lupino fits into that tradition. I think that our Hitchhiker is one of the best films about men. And I don't think there's many women characters even in that film. But yeah, the earlier films are very much focused on the sort of the lived experience of women. And Outrage is next level. I mean, there's a scene quite early on where she's the rape survivor is being interviewed by police, and she's being basically interrogated, and the whole thing is shot through like the bars of her bed. And it's a
Mm.
sort of, it's an old film noir trick, right? The bars to represent the prison. But it's so powerful, and you watch that scene and you think of something like The Accused, where we have similar scenes of, the idea that it's the survivor who's becoming interrogated. We see that stuff in more contemporary films, and it comes straight, from this sort of Lupino moment. I never thought that film would find a release. I cried when Imprint
Yeah.
asked me to do the commentary, and it was very close to when Josh Nelson and I did the commentary for Morven Caller, the Lynn Ramsey film,
Yes.
You
which
read
is
my
another
mind.
film that I never thought I would see the day that got released. So both of those films for me like were real bucket list stuff, and the
I
fact that I
was
did them so close together,
Yeah, I was gonna
really
say
emotional.
yeah, I was gonna say that I saw that Morven Collar's one of your favorite films of all time. I saw your list come out from the
Yeah, I
Sight
mean,
and
we
Sound
were
list. Yeah,
very fortunate to have um
Fun
the
City.
Fun City on twice. And the first time he was on Jonathan Hertzberg, right, Steven?
Yes.
I always
Yeah.
forget all the names we have of people on. I thanked him personally for like finally putting this out on Blu-ray. It was the first time ever. The only way you could find this movie was like an old DVD, at least here in the US, that came out in like 2002 when the movie came out, I think. It was Lynn Ramsey's first two films I had waited years for, Ratcatcher and Morven Caller. And just finally this movie got a release. I mean, I can't recommend this enough to people. Um, and even just Lynn Ramsey's work in general. I'm just a
Oh,
gigantic fan of her.
the Queen.
Oh,
I'm such a huge fan of hers. Actually, this is sort of a point. I'm doing a talk at the Australian Centre for the Moving Image in a couple of weeks on like women in horror, and I was just pulling this together sort of in the last 24 hours. This sort of talk that I'm giving, and one of the things that I've realised, and I don't think I've articulated it before, is not just women in horror, but women's filmmaking in general. I think that it's a discourse very much driven, understandably enough, by women. Like lots of women critics and women
Yeah.
filmmakers really kind of driving this really important conversation. But behind the scenes, there are men that I admire because they would never call themselves male feminists. They're not those creepy guys, "Oh, I'm a male feminist," and kind of look at
Yeah.
your tits while they're talking to you. Those guys are bad. They're not those guys. These are guys that just put their heads down and do their job and do the work. And they're the ones who are digging up these films. They're the ones who are doing this extraordinary archival work of
Yeah.
rescuing women's films. There was a film from Arrow called a few years ago called Cold Light of Day,
Mm.
which if you don't have it and you're listening to this, everybody needs to get this film. Um, and the director of that was actually in my Women in Horror book, Fiona Louise, no surname. And there was no information about it. I think I found the film on YouTube, and I was absolutely like it was like being struck by lightning. It's a serial, like really raw, gritty serial killer film about Dennis Nielsen, true crime film. And there was just no information. And I'd sort of, there were rumors on Cinemageddon that I'd sort of gleaned that maybe it was an alias, and maybe she died by suicide, and maybe it was the producer using a fake name. I had nothing to go on for the entry, and then Arrow released this incredible release of this film where she does a commentary and she's interviewed, and it's like, that's incredible archival work that is like the nuts and bolts of what we need to really champion women's filmmaking. And I don't think physical media gets the kudos that it deserves. Agfa's work on Sarah Jacobson, groundbreaking, just groundbreaking.
Doris Wishman stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was
And
another
time and
one that
time
came out
again,
recently.
Outrage and Morven Caller, like these are the films. There are obviously women home entertainment producers who are doing amazing work, but I certainly don't want to diminish their presence. But it is largely a kind of male-dominated industry.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
yeah.
just there's so many guys that I work with every day who just really quietly just get the work done. And they're not people that are sort of championed as such. And I think that they are people that would actually be quite embarrassed if I were to name them.
I think
I just want them to know that they're recognized.
Yeah,
I know what
exactly.
they're doing, and I'm grateful.
I think when it's like anything, if you feel like somebody's bragging about something, or they feel the need to like bring up that they're doing something that's important like that, you feel like it's insincere. So it's like if you're just doing the work because you think it needs to be done and you're not making a big deal about it, that tells me that you just care about the thing.
Right.
And
Very
that's
true.
and
I've always
yeah,
said,
I mean, it's
like, it's like those people who call themselves a genius. Real geniuses don't call themselves genius.
Yeah, because
exactly.
they're too busy crying in bed of insecurity and like,
Yeah.
oh, well, the stuff I don't know.
It's the same thing with, I would say, not a big surprise here, considering that the way our society is, but misogyny is on the rise again, and people who give themselves the moniker the alpha male, real like genuine quote unquote alpha males don't refer to themselves as that. If you are, chances are you're not. You're you're kind of you're saying things just to make it known that you think you are or you want to be.
Big time.
And
Big
it's
time.
like the real genius is like, there's one thing about gloating. If you achieve something, like an award, or you're a top prime athlete and you're one of the best in the world and you're recognized for that, I get it. But if you're not, you're kind of, I understand ego boosts, but come on, let's be real right now.
It's a bit obvious, right? It's
Yeah,
sort of
don't be so
bit
obvious.
needy. Don't be so needy.
Yeah.
And I would say
exactly.
this is going back to kind of women in film. I think I've said this a few times here on the show, there's been a huge boost of recognition or kind of retrospective going back and assessing women's role in film history and women's roles in film in general from the very beginning. I think it's been a huge boost in terms of writing, not only from you, but writing from many other people that I've noticed online, that people going back and kind of unearthing a lot of his names. Like, and I mean, Ida Lupino people know, but you don't understand that she was one of the very few who was a woman being able to make films in the 1950s and the 1960s, where that was not the case at all. And it's just, you really don't realize how suppressed or oppressed the women in film were at that time, due to the male dominated world in which it is. But it's not like they didn't want to do it, they just weren't allowed to do it. And those who did, their work wasn't as promoted as men, you know what I mean? And it's really a kind of unfortunate of all of the things we probably lost because of that. And but also the things we're discovering, like in Out of the Pino, like a lot of the earlier women, with a lot of these box sets that are coming out. I keep bringing up the early pioneers women in film box set from Kino,
Incredible.
which is, that's education in a box. Like,
It is. It
how
is.
would you find
That's
these
film
films
school.
anywhere else?
That is film school. Like,
Yeah, how would you find
it's.
them?
I mean, it's hard to sort of overstate how important outrage is, because I mean there were films about that had sexual violence and had rape in them. I'm thinking of like Johnny Belinda is a really obvious one that came before it. Male directors, obviously, but I mean, even going back to Birth of a Nation, right? So it's not that was like the first film about rape, but what Lapino did that was so important is that she set it in the present day. So even something like Bergman's Virgin Spring, rape is historicized as something kind of primal and primitive and old. It doesn't happen in the
Yeah.
world that we live in. Whereas Lapino was like, not only does it happen in the world that we live in, it happens in the suburbs where we live. It happens to nice
Yeah.
girls. It happens to, it happens to nice girls who are engaged. It it,
Mm.
Yeah.
it happens to normal people. And I mean that's radical filmmaking. Radical.
Yeah. I could tell
Yeah.
you a radical film that I just recently that you were involved in that I need to watch your I believe you did a visual essay or maybe it was a commentary for this film. I think it's a Infernal Rapist um, for Vinegar Syndrome. That's a tough movie to try to get people on board with.
Well, the
Yeah.
It,
title's tough.
well, yeah, it is, but the movie is literally about a guy that gets rescued by like a demon of some kind and brought back
A
to life
woman
just
a woman demon,
a
which
woman
is
demon.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
I mean I
to go
live
on and rape a bunch of people. That's literally his objective is to go around and rape and kill people for her. So explain. I mean, obviously, I want people to listen to your work off that
mm,
disc, but how do you go about explaining that the films like that to people to where like we kind of touched on a little bit that some people will be completely turned off by something like this just because of what it is,
yep.
but a movie like this where it really goes straight at the thing and it almost feels like the purest form of exploitation you could get on that subject matter, how do you get people to like understand it from a different perspective? That's
I
tough.
guess for me, and this goes back to my first book, the first edition of the Rape Revenge book. Um, yeah, like I very much realized that I wanted the people that I wanted to talk to, again, they weren't, 60-year-old, 70-year-old professors in universities. I wanted to talk to 15-year-old boys who would watch this stuff. Um, and I'm not going to tell anybody that they need to watch a film called Infernal Rapist. But, I mean, if you're
Yeah,
thinking that's actually sounds fucking horrible and I don't want to watch that, I'm not going to tell you that that's wrong. Like, of course, like if
exactly.
you have an instinct not to watch a film called that, that pretty much kind of delivers on the luridness of the title, I'm with you. I support you on that decision. The conversation that I guess I want to have is with the people that would watch a film called Infernal Rapist and to say, you're not degenerate, you're not
Yeah.
deviant, that there is stuff going on here that, I mean, for me, films like that, and I every day I just thank, I'm not religious, but I thank the heavens that I get offered work like that, Vinegar Syndrome, Terrorvision, so many of these amazing labels, that they think to even come to me to have my thoughts on this stuff. Because what so much exploitation film does, and the reason why I'm so passionate about it and I love doing this kind of work is because it, for better or for worse, it brings things to the surface.
Yeah.
I'm a strong believer that not, there's no film, even like a straight to video, low budget, whatever, nothing's made in a vacuum. And every film, often despite itself, even if it's like really low budget, really amateur, whatever, there's stuff in there, there's
Hmm.
stuff. And it doesn't mean that, like we need to kind of do, shot by shot analysis. It's like, okay, well, what are the tensions playing out here? What are the hypocrisies? What are the contradictions within this film? And what do they mean? What can they tell us? And what do we, what can we get out of a film called Infernal Rapist if it's the kind of film that we want to watch? And I probably get more feedback from people about films like Infernal Rapist than I do from things like Outrage or The Proposition or Ingmar Bergman. And I
Yeah.
love doing that stuff too. I absolutely love doing that stuff. But there's a lot out there, right? Like if you're going to watch, listen to our commentary on Bergman's The Virgin Spring, you're probably already pretty savvy. You're pretty learned and pretty familiar with Bergman. The same doesn't apply to Infernal Rapist. You're not gonna, there's not a lot written on it. There's not a lot out there. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm very much about having like a kind of non-judgmental space. But I think yeah, I don't think that, if you want to watch a film called Infernal Rapist, I don't think you're a deviant. And I do think
Yeah.
there's lots of stuff going on in that movie, and I think it's an amazing film. I don't. Yeah, it's a challenging film. It's like it
It's
is what it says
challenging.
on the
Yeah.
packet. It's very confronting. And I'm not
Yeah.
apologizing for it. I'm not
No.
defending it. That's very important for me to say that. And it's like, oh, I hate when people do that. Like, are you hard enough to watch this film? my sort of birth into or kind of awakening to exploitation film was as a teenager was through men who sort of presented it as a dare or a challenge. You know, are you tough enough to watch Faces of Death?
Yeah.
And it's really gendered. I know so many women that were the same. And that's how I got into rape revenge film. It's like,
Yeah.
actually, this is for me. I don't need you to tell me that, you know, I don't need a man to kind of frame Miss 45 for me. I can watch it on my own terms in my own way, sort of reclaim that. And I feel the same about Infernal Rapist and those kinds of movies. I can watch them on my own terms and get what I want out of it. And if you don't want to watch those films, that's absolutely fine. And I defend that choice, as I said, you know, like, yeah, not everybody's going to want to watch something like that.
Yeah, I think you know what at least the way I think about films like that, where it's like I said, almost purely exploitative. It feels purely exploitative in that it's, you know, kind of maybe even reveling in the violence a little bit and stuff. It even when something is presenting something that terrible in that way, you can get something, you can learn something from how terrible that is. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like you about what not you know, things that you don't want to experience in life and in, you know, like you know what I mean? Like you can get, it's not, you know, not every film is about you know, gaining some sort of inspiration or learning something positive. It's sometimes about learning something
Not
negative.
didactic. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. It's not every film has to be a quote unquote learning moment,
Yeah.
you know? But that's what I love about exploitation film is that the
Yeah.
pretense drops. There's, you know, for better or for worse, they're so honest.
Yeah.
They're so honest. And I find that there's mainstream films that are much more exploitative than exploitation films.
Oh yeah,
Um,
a lot of mainstream films are really trying to manipulate the audience in various ways. Um,
Well, I
whether
mean,
it be
superhero films by themselves are just, you know, they're basically
well, there
military movies.
I was
They're
gonna
like,
say
you know,
who said it. The Martin Scorsese said they're like theme park rides, right? You know what I
yeah. I mean,
mean?
they're just showy,
They're,
you know,
they're there to entertain you and take you on a ride. You know what I mean?
yeah.
That's kind
yeah,
of the way the modern day blockbuster is structured. It's kind of probably the way it's been structured, at least as long as I've been around, you know, from
Yeah.
through the
And
late 80s and the 90s.
I think that there's a lot. I mean, I'm personally not into superhero films. They're just not my thing. But I think that there's a lot to be said about film as an immersive experience. You know, we
yeah,
fetishize narrative. And I don't know what to do when people, you know, I wrote a book on Dario Argento's Suspiria. And when people say to me, yeah, I don't know, there wasn't much of a story and the characters were really thin, I genuinely don't know what to say to them. It's like, well, yes, but what about all the other stuff? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
about
What
the
about the
music?
colors?
I mean, the
Right,
thing is some people they you know, I think with film watching, there's sometimes a lot a translation. People lose the translation of it because film can be communicated in different ways. People they don't know all the languages of film.
Mm,
So a lot of people know straight translation, whether it's like we need
yeah,
a plot we can easily follow or a character we can easily relate with. But sometimes film is communicated with us purely visually or a purely, you know, very subtle way where you have to do some thinking, or you need to watch it a couple times, or you know, there's different ways to tell stories. There's different structures. There's,
yep,
you know, this just
perspectives. Yeah.
people don't have that same, they don't key into the language of film as well as I think they might have used to. And maybe I think that's part of that's just because people only watch certain types of movies now, and they're not uh, opening themselves up to watching other things and trying to, you know, try to look at film as more than just escapism or
yeah.
entertainment, or, you know,
I
so
I think too there's like a personal dimension to that. So I was diagnosed with autism quite late in life, and it was a really useful lens for me to look back at my own the way that I relate to film. So I've never really, you know, the idea of kind of and again, to be clear, I'm not saying that this is true of every person who's autistic. Absolutely not. But for me personally, like connecting with character. Like I don't understand conversations about identification. It's like, well, I'm
mm,
not 5. I mean, in broader conversations, you know, like yes, we should have, you know, more queer people. Well, we should have more people of color. We should have more black people, indigenous people. Absolutely. So in terms of identification, in that sense, yes. But in terms of like the personal identification, I don't need to identify with a character on screen to enjoy a film because I'm not a child. Like I just it
Mm,
bewilders me when people say, well, you know, I didn't have a connection, I didn't identify with anybody.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, it's a film set in a German dance school in the 1970s about witches. Maybe you're not meant to connect with anybody.
Yeah.
Maybe your
Yeah.
connection is sensorial, and that's how I tend to engage with films, is more on a kind of almost on a visceral gut level way. And Suspiria is like the kind of the
Yeah.
perfect example of that, because
Mm,
it's a
very much so.
sensory experience rather than it is a kind of the opening song of that film is witch witch witch. It's like, oh, I wonder what the mystery of the dance
I
school
mean,
is.
yeah. I mean, we talked. I brought up Irreversible earlier. I mean, Gaspar Noé's films are all about sensory. God, I
Overload.
mean, tons of his movies are all about sensory overload.
I
Yeah,
mean, just transition from that. Good, nice setup, Stephen.
rough.
Lux Eterna is all about sensories. There's a sequence in that film where I believe that Gaspar Noé is trying to uh, blast our mind into seizure-like state.
I've worked on a lot of home entertainment releases on Gaspar Noé's films. Quite a few. So I think I did Climax for Arrow, Enter the Void for Arrow, Lux Eterna for our friends at Yellow Veil. Hi, Yellow Veil. And there was another one. Oh, Irreversible for Indicator. And I mean, even when I hate his films, I love his films. And he's a classic example of a filmmaker who I can't defend everything in his films, and I won't. I'm not going to say that. I mean, I think Irreversible has got some serious issues when it comes to homophobia, and that perhaps feeds into some of his other films. I'm not going to do cartwheels to try to twist that to have that not be the case. Like there's some stuff in that, and obviously, the depiction of rape in that film is a really difficult thing. But his films always capture me. I've always got something to say about his films, and I think that he understands the sensorium, right? Like he understands that we engage with film through the body. People like Helen Katat and Bruno Forzani are like that. I think Kino Lorber put out Let the Corpses Tan, which I did a commentary on with John Edmund. Peter Strickland, Lucille Hasdehalovic, there's these very sensory filmmakers that I love. Like they're like, they're like elevated for me, really up there. Vortex. Sorry, I forgot Vortex.
I was going to say
Vortex
Vortex is great too. Yeah,
I
got to get that. I got to get that release. That release where it pulls out from the middle. Yeah, God, it's
for me. I mean, I think of David Lynch's work, especially his early stuff. I think of Eraserhead, where just there's that constant just sound throughout that film that's just underneath the surface of just setting the scene of this dystopian dreamlike hellscape that this character is living in.
Blue Velvet's
another one. Just the sound of Dennis Hopper breathing through an oxygen mask that's not hooked up to oxygen. Like, what does that insanity sound like in your mind's eye? A lot of his work had that. Even his television series, Twin Peaks, the Angelo Badalamenti score, haunting to this day. It's haunting yet beautiful at the same time. It's just kind of the magic of music, I guess. I guess that's the purpose of the whole musical scores, is to give you certain emotions. We talked about manipulation a little bit ago, and it's like that's kind of what musical scores do.
I have such a thing about film scores. Like I've recently been watching I don't know if you've seen Holy Spider, the Ali, I can never remember his name. It's the guy that did Border. He's amazing. It's Holy Spider is like a true Iranian true crime film. But the score is just next level. Like the film is good. He's an amazing filmmaker. But what that score does with that film, it's like, it makes me really angry at scores that aren't that good. I know that sounds really terrible.
No, it's like sometimes things come out and you just like, they didn't spend enough time on that. They just spend that music is just. I think I've heard that soundtrack before. Maybe
people are going to be really angry with me, but I was really disappointed with the score for Bones and All. Like
I haven't seen it yet. Yeah,
I think Reznor. I think is an amazing composer for films, but that one it really fell flat for me.
Okay,
I was very disappointed, and I think it impacted my feelings about the film as a whole. I think with a different score, that could have been something really different.
It is.
People are going to go nuts at me. You can't.
I doubt
I've said a lot worse things.
Yeah, Steven has had a
Trent
few
Reznor won't.
hot
I
takes.
think that he can live with it. I think that he'll be fine.
Be
If I
fine.
say, "Yeah, dude, it's not my favorite of your work," I reckon he'll be okay.
I mean, the direct David Lynch connection there, because Trent Reznor was in the Twin Peaks: The Return, where
Yeah,
he did a whole song in one of
and
the
his great
episodes.
work on the Lost Highway soundtrack was
Yes, yes,
amazing.
he did. I mean, yeah, Trent Reznor, he made the transition from, I guess, musical artist to musical composing, which I
Composer.
guess
I mean,
is
he's doing
not
both.
bad. Yeah, he's doing both. I mean,
But I do want.
Clint Mansell as well. I think Clint Mansell's like
yes,
underrated. I think that Clint. I
Yeah.
mean, Clint was in a band called Pop or Eat Itself. Who I skipped my high school formal to see underage to go to a Pop or
nice.
Eat Itself gig. So I have this sort of connection to
Yeah.
Clint Mansell that he
That's a
doesn't know
rebellious
about.
move. I like
Yeah,
it.
and I think he's. I mean, I love Pop or Eat Itself, but his film score work I think is next level and just unrelentingly good.
Yeah.
I think he's such an underrated film composer.
Yeah, he did. I believe, didn't he do the score for Drive? Right? Or am I
No,
thinking of somebody else?
that was somebody else. Clint did
Oh,
Pi, I think is probably
yes,
his
Clint
really
did. We
famous one.
worked a lot with
Oh, and
Aronofsky.
Requiem for a Dream,
Yes,
the
Yeah.
there we
famous
Yeah.
go.
that's
I'm
like his big
thinking.
one.
I mean, I'm thinking of somebody else. I don't know why
Yeah.
I was in that Drive mode for a second. Yeah, Clint Mansell did work a lot with Aronofsky. Yeah, Working for a Dream. Even if you haven't seen the film, talk about a traumatic film in many ways. Um, it's you've probably heard the score many times. For those of you listening, it's one that gets stuck in your head. Yeah, I was thinking of Cliff Martinez.
Yep.
That's why
Yeah.
Cliff Martinez did the Drive soundtrack.
Yeah.
Of,
But
uh,
I do
yeah,
want to talk about we said you've done a lot of commentaries and you do a lot of commentaries with a friend of yours, Josh Nelson. So talk about that how that partnership kind of started, because you've done a lot of them with him.
Yeah, so Josh and I did radio together in Melbourne for years. We were on a show called Plato's Cave on public radio here, a really famous sort of quite iconic Melbourne public radio station called Triple R. And it was with our friend Thomas Caldwell, who has work on a few entertainment releases. He's got a video essay, I think, on the upcoming Second Sight Picnic at Hanging Rock. Thomas is an amazing film critic and a beautiful person. And Cerise Howard, who does, she's really doing a lot of work in home entertainment now. She's incredible. She did, I think, the commentary on Tangerine, which is really good, a really great commentary. And I think she's on the Texas Chainsaw from Second Sight coming up.
We know you're on that too as well. So
Yeah, so Cerise is doing amazing work. But Josh moved to the United States in, I think, 2016, 2017. And we just missed doing radio together. That was sort of the way that we hung out. And I don't think it was even a conscious thing, like, let's do a lot of commentaries together. I think I didn't even remember what our first one was. But I remembered, like, I miss talking to Josh about film. And so in a way
Yeah.
it's sort of replaced our, it's like a way to catch up. And I love it.
That's great.
I love doing commentaries with Josh because I kind of get nostalgic for the old days. And yeah,
So
like our kind of our whole friendship was sort of always predicated about talking about film. So it feels very natural and very organic.
So is it weird when you do one by yourself? You just
Totally
yeah,
different
yeah.
experience. Totally different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'd always prefer to do one with Josh.
Yeah.
Always.
do you find it easier to do a commentary with someone else versus yourself in the sense of like shared responsibility, camaraderie, and like it's
I
just an
think
easier experience?
it depends on the film. There's a couple that haven't been announced yet that I've done solo that I'm really glad that I did solo. And certainly that applies to, things that I've done in the past. I'm really glad that I did them by myself because
Yeah.
there's either a personal dimension or there's a particular kind of line that I want to follow through on, or something like Outrage, where it's like it's such a deep research interest of mine
Yeah.
that I can really kind of get into the guts of it by myself. So it does depend on the film.
Yeah. Yeah.
But certainly, even just as a listener, I find that it tends to be more engaging listening to two people chat than it does listening to one person in monotone. Like it does tend to be a
Yeah.
little bit drier. You feel a bit weird making jokes when you're talking by yourself. You feel like a
Yeah.
little bit of a psycho. Whereas if it's two people, you get banter, and that's when a commentary for me works the best. Is when you've got this sort of informed banter.
Yeah.
It can be very high energy. One of my favorite commentaries, and it was oddly very like for all of the stuff that I've done, this was probably the most controversial in terms of like Twitter outrage. I still can't believe this. It wasn't Infernal Rapist. It wasn't Thriller. It was Cool as Ice, the Vanilla Ice film. And to this
What?
day, yeah, people were like, how dare this be out on Blu-ray? How dare it? And it's like, well, fair call.
How
Like
dare
I don't know. But
gatekeeping's an issue when it comes
people were
to
like, these
that.
critics are made up, they don't even exist. Who the hell are they? How humiliating for them. And I still think it's one of the best commentaries that Josh and I ever did. And I don't read reviews ever. And I have good friends, Bill Ackerman, shout out, who
Yeah.
send me good reviews because
Yeah.
they know that I don't read them. Because I just, that way madness lies. But we got great reviews for Cool as Ice. And we were really proud of it. Like, we worked really hard on it because it was actually a really hard film to talk about,
Yeah.
because people sort of, it's like, it's a joke film, and we didn't want to do the kind of so bad it's good thing. But of course, at the same time, you can't do this is one of the greatest films of the 20th century. So yeah, like a film like that, there's no way that I could have done that by myself. So with Josh, it was them that still remains one of my favorite commentaries that I've done.
Yeah, that's for a movie like that. Yeah, it's good to be able to talk about it with it. Them are movies you watch with friends, so it's good to talk about it with friends, and that's and also I do want to make sure I bring up, and kind of reverting back to our previous discussion on rape films. We did get a chance to watch a recent thing that just got announced, Gina, that Canadian International Pictures just announced, and so I want to shout out to Jonathan over there, who sent me a link to watch the film, send us both a link to watch the film and watch your visual essay on it. So I just want to say, great film. I really enjoyed it. And also your visual essay was really informative and helped me kind of understand some of the background things that I didn't notice. Like, for instance, we kind of talked about it before, in the rape scene itself, there is like the Canadian, like, national anthem song playing in the back. I was like, I didn't even notice that.
It's
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
So I wrote about that. I mean, companies like CIP, I think, are a really good example of what I was talking about before, in doing this like really important, fundamental archival work, and getting it out there, and not getting it out there to a limited elite, getting it out there to people that love movies. I mean, it's such important work. And again, I don't think any of the people that work for these companies would be as kind of, as highfalutin perhaps as I am about it. But I just think they're in the trenches, finding these films, saving these films, rescuing these films. Not just that, but getting them out there for people to see. Gina is a treasure. I mean, it's a film. It's one of the first films, I think, that Kayla Janice and I first connected on. And Kayla does a commentary with Justine. I've gone blank on Justine's surname. Please tell me. I feel awful. Amazing film critic, Canadian, wonderful woman.
I'm looking it up right now to save you.
Well, they
Come
do a
on,
commentary.
browser, don't fail me now.
They do a commentary. I do a video essay, and for me, like, having a feature on a release like this with somebody of Kayla's kind of caliber is incredible. So yeah, that release to me is like it's like a textbook case of why physical media, why home entertainment is so vital and so important.
Yeah, the person that you were referring to was Justine Smith.
Justine, I'm so sorry.
Oh, actually, I think I have another one of your work on my shelf. I think you did an interview for the Australian edition of Raw from a few years ago, and I ran because for some reason in the United States they didn't decide to release that movie on Blu-ray until like 4 or 5 years after it came out, and I was like, I need to get this on Blu-ray from somewhere. So I was like, I just found Australia was releasing it, and I ended up buying it, and lo and behold, years later, there it is on my shelf with an
That was
interview for you.
for Monster Films.
From Monster, yes.
Yeah, and that was the year so I interviewed Julia, the year that Kayla Janice was the creative director of Monster Fest. She got Julia out here, and I interviewed her in like a cinema stairwell.
Oh, that must have been incredible.
It was amazing. But a lot of those extras got picked up, and then they added new content for the second site release.
Yes,
I think I did a video essay. Yeah, I did a separate video essay for that. I'm not sure. I think a couple of the commentaries, one of the commentaries, maybe a commentary with Emma Westwood got used for that with Julia. I'm not sure from memory, but Yeah, that was I don't do a lot of work in Australia, um, at all. I started
Mhm.
off in doing this stuff in so around 2000 and maybe it's 2006, 2007. My first home entertainment was, first home entertainment release was doing an essay for Ingmar Bergman's Dreams
Oh,
for
wow.
Mad Men's Director's Suite. And I also did a commentary with Christian McRae on Fassbinder's The Merchant of the Four Seasons,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's actually been picked up by since then that's been picked up by
A
Arrow. So
yeah,
that
Arrow, they released it in a whole big box. They
they've
released it in
yeah,
smaller boxes. They
yep.
they released it a few times.
So
I know
that
here in the
commentary's got a
States,
lot of legs. Yeah,
yeah, and here in the States, we got I think a Blu-ray from Criterion the years before that. Um,
it's such a good film. Fassbinder's one of my favorite
Fassbender,
directors.
unique director. He did a
Yeah,
lot of work in a very short amount of time.
just
Um,
my favorite Cocaine Bear.
yeah.
He's he went hard for better or for worse. The dude went hard.
Yes, he did.
Um,
I mean,
I
what's that
love
old
yeah,
saying? Better to burn out than fade away, I guess, you know?
yeah.
Um, yeah, he was working on a film, I think, up until he passed. I think he was in the middle of working on
Yeah,
stuff.
he was so prolific, so prolific. And even his sort of lesser known films, you just watch them and it's like, this is insane.
Oh,
Like,
his
this what am
early
I
work,
watching? Yeah.
markedly different too.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I know Criterion had released an Eclipse set of his earlier stuff, like, kind of on DVD, and yeah, like, it just incredible work.
Yeah.
Very experimental, very
One of my
experimental.
favorites. Just one of my favorites. I just don't think he's ever been paralleled. Um,
I don't think he gets
really.
talked about enough,
No,
honestly.
no.
I mean, especially when it comes to the way they teach foreign cinema, at least here, you always hit the main people. You always get to the French New Wave. That's in every curriculum. We were talking about academia. French New Wave
Yep.
seems to be in every curriculum for foreign cinema. I started with, to me, Italian neorealism was my real introduction to foreign cinema and the power of foreign cinema. Um, like Rossellini and
Mm.
Vittorio De Sica. Yet again, I still think Bicycle Thieves is film school 101.
Yep.
I think that's taught in every film course in the world.
Well, here we are back for a more Blu-ray talk.
We are indeed.
A lot of Blu-ray talk, actually.
We are back to the future, I guess, or back in the future.
Oh shit!
Uh, I guess that is that a proper is that proper for this thing where we
I guess
record something in the past and then we come back to the present, so we're like
sure.
back to the future. I
A
don't
lot
know.
of
I'm
time
just
travel
stretching
going
shit
on.
out.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got some announcements this week. I think the headliner was Criterion dropping earlier this week. Um, if you listen to the last episode we talked about a movie and a possible future Criterion release that they then announced a couple of days later. So I don't know if they were listening or if they read my mind. Either way, kind of cool. But we'll get into all of that. But Steven, where do we want to start?
Well, I just wanted to bring up a little tidbit here. I thought
Oh, yeah,
this was really
something
fun.
cool.
Severin, Severin has their version of the Criterion Closet. They call it the Severin Cellar, or so it's a big room. It's actually, I would argue it's cooler than the Criterion Closet, to be
It's a
honest.
lot larger, definitely.
Lot more going on in there, and so they had filmmaker Gaspar Noé come and visit the Severin Cellar, and he goes through he just goes through and just picks a lot of things off the shelf and talks about them a lot. And you can go to blu-ray.com and obviously you should go watch the video, but if you want to go and figure out just a quick reference of what he pulled off the shelf, you can go to blu-ray.com and there's an article there with everything listed of what he picked off the shelf and with the video there. So yeah, it's really good. Really cool to see that he had some Eloy de la Iglesia films that he pulled off the shelf, which is one of my favorite filmmakers that I've discovered recently. And Four Flies on Grey Velvet, of course, is a more recent 4K from Severin that he brought up.
chose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he even went into stuff that he had not seen, but stuff that like piqued his interest just based
Yeah.
off of the title, the cover, the pictures that were put on the back of the disc of the
Yeah.
cover art
Yeah.
and whatnot. And also, I guess, kind of a chasing labels connection. I believe Andrew Furtado was responsible for that video. I think he's behind the scenes with the camera
Yeah,
and stuff, and probably produced it, as well as everyone else at Severin. What was also interesting in it is that we talked with Alexandra Heller-Nicholas about Gaspar Noé, specifically his film Irreversible, which she has written about and I think done extra features for. And of course, his other film Lux Eterna, I think she also did
I believe so. Yeah,
special
yeah,
features for and is written about as well. So kind of interesting Gaspar Noé connection to this episode,
yeah.
unintentionally, really. But you bring up the Criterion Closet, and he did a Criterion Closet video several years ago,
Yeah.
where he went in there and picked out some stuff. And when I think that was when he was promoting, oh man, maybe his movie Love, that Netflix film.
Hmm.
Love 3D, Love 3D is kind of experimental. I was gonna say sex movie, but in a way it is. For those of you who know what I'm talking about. But yeah, he's an interesting individual to say the least. If you just see
Definitely,
him in videos and interviews.
he's definitely unique to his own. He's there's not really any other filmmaker like him, which
Mm,
is why he's
indeed.
interesting. It's which is why he piques my interest. But
Also, Severin Seller has had several people on there.
oh, Sean Baker was in there.
Sean Baker was in there a couple of years ago,
Yeah,
and he chose a few films and talked about some other stuff and whatnot. It was a really cool video. Check that out if you're on the Severin YouTube channel. But moving on from there, let's get into Blu-rays. Let's talk about something that surprised me this week because we haven't heard from them in a little bit, and that's Warner Archive.
all right.
Warner Archive, hasn't announced stuff in a little while. I think, Steven, I can't remember the last time we talked about them. Probably a
I
couple
don't
months
know.
ago.
I think they snuck in maybe a little bit ago, and it
I
just
know they've talked about stuff all the way up through March already, hence why these are their April releases, and they
yeah.
didn't quite like announce these in a press release or anything like that. They did it through a podcast, and they
Hmm.
announced a few films here. A Lion is in the Streets, um, One Way Passage, Safe in Hell, Storm Warning, and The Strawberry Blonde. Um, Fortunately, I've actually seen all of these movies. And these all range from the 1930s all the way up through the 1950s. And two of these films star James Cagney.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
The
James,
Strawberry Blonde and
yeah,
A Life is in the Streets.
I believe also the director Royal Walsh is
Mm,
the director of at least two of these movies, I believe.
yes, he directed A Lion is in the Streets. I know that definitely, because he also directed Cagney in, um, oh man, why am I blanking on it? He directed Cagney in another film that I can't remember right off the top of my head, and it's a big time film noir too.
Yeah,
Um, Raoul Walsh kind of did everything, really. He he directed stuff all the way from like the 20s all the way through the 60s, I believe. Just a fantastic director. And I think he also directed the Roaring Twenties, which
that's what I'm thinking of.
they didn't
That's what I'm
quite
thinking of.
announce, but they teased that it is coming.
Yeah,
So I that's the one I kind of wish they would have announced because it's the one I want the most. The movie I'm talking about that I blanked on completely is White Heat. That's the
yeah,
movie.
yeah.
That's had a Blu-ray release from Warner Brothers for years. But yeah, I like this group of films. I've seen them all. They're all relatively good. Um, the ones that I hadn't seen coming into this week that I watched for the show was A Lion is in the Streets and Storm Warning and Safe in Hell. Safe in Hell is directed by William Wellman.
Yeah,
Um, and he's a fantastic director. He's kind of responsible for the reason why they had the Hays Code a couple of years after this movie came out. This is a pre-code film. I love pre-code films. And this came out in 1931, and there's a Warner Archive DVD that I think's been around for a number of years, probably over a decade. So this is a nice upgrade from that. What's cool about this movie is that it only clocks in at 73 minutes long, so it's very quick to watch. It's an easy watch. You can probably find it online somewhere right now because of its age. Doesn't star any like real big time stars or anything like that, but the premise of it is fascinating to me. So it it takes centers around this woman called Gilda, not the Gilda from the Rita Hayworth film Gilda, just another
ah,
person of the same name. And she commits a crime in New Orleans, and she essentially leaves and goes to this unnamed Caribbean island, which I guess doesn't have any extradition treaty or any extradition thing. So criminals basically hide out on this Caribbean island if they're running away from the law because there's no U.S. jurisdiction there and no one will kick you off. So there's like murderers and bootleggers and all kind of criminals down there just escaping from the law, and she is one of them. And what's interesting is that she's kind of the only woman criminal that's there. So all of the other criminals kind of like pursue her, like kind of, predatorily, really, because she's so fascinating to them. Because I guess she's the only woman on the island who's not one of the native people there. So she's alluring to them. So they're trying to like find different ways to kind of like impress her and like get with her and kind of things like that. She's just not having it. Turns out that she's already married. She's already has like a boyfriend who is like I want to say a merchant marine, maybe not a merchant marine, but he's like honest. He goes around, he sails on ships and goes to like around the world and stuff. So she's kind of marooned there waiting for him and then kind of pushing all of these men aside. And it's a really good tight 75-minute movie. I really dug it a lot. And William Wellman kind of always pushing that boundary. And here he's pushing things without saying it, but kind of implying that she has a history of perhaps being a sex worker or something like
Mm.
that, which of course, 1930s, you're pushing that boundary, that pre-code boundary. And yeah, I really like that movie a lot. A movie that's kind of on the other end of the spectrum, that's not really that great, surprisingly, is A Lion is in the Streets.
Mm.
This movie is kind of just like, let's have James Cagney go crazy. Go crazy in the sense
Ah.
like he's notorious for hamming it up on screen in a lot of his roles, and I feel like this is the most over the top, most hammy, most James Cagney type of performance that I think I've ever seen from him. In this movie he is someone who is kind of a grifter, a con man, if you will, but he's not trying to like he's kind of he's not trying to sell you something like physically, but he's trying to like dupe you into getting you over to his ideas. For example, there's a part of the film where he runs for governor and he's got to like pontificate political points, political views, attack his opponent. And he's such a good orator, such a good, talker that he's able to get people over to his side. But it also shows inevitably there is a downfall when you get into something as dirty as politics, specifically local politics. And he kind of falls into that trap. And there's a whole romance and love story and complications going on in the movie. But there's just instances that are so kind of ridiculously over the top. I don't want to get into them because it would just be spoilerish. And I'm just like, this is this is not supposed to be funny, but I find it hilarious.
Mm.
So that's kind of me on there. But yeah, I like this slate in and of itself. Special shout out to the Strawberry Blonde, because I believe that's the film. Yeah, that's the film does star uh, Olivia de Havilland, Rita Hayworth, Jack Carson, of course, James Cagney. Um, yeah, this film that I saw many years ago, and I hadn't seen it in a long time, but I remember it being very good. And I'll
Yeah.
watch anything with Rita Hayworth, and I'm going to add it to my Rita Hayworth collection.
You have a collection for I think everybody.
I think I do. It
It's
started
weird.
out.
I really don't know how you organize your collection.
It started out kind of like, oh, there's just certain people that I like, but then I realized that I kind of like everybody.
Yeah, I think you just like to collect. You just like to collect in the very like really fine tuned, organized ways, which is I don't know how you do
The
it.
thing is, I mean, we've talked about it many times about how the nuanced way in which I organize my collection, but I think I do it just so that I'm the only one who can figure it out. You know what I mean? Like you ever like
It's
make
weird.
it's a kind of like creating a password to something and you want
Sure.
it to be unique to you so that nobody can break the code or something like that. Maybe that's I'm doing that subconsciously, but yeah, that's
Maybe.
Warner Archive slate.
Well,
Steven,
I did see something.
yeah, what did you watch?
The only one I got a chance to watch is Storm Warning. Um,
Nice. Yeah, I
I
saw that.
liked it. Yeah, I liked it.
Um,
It's
actually, a movie that is sadly more relevant as time has gone on.
Yeah, well, and it was nice to see Ronald Reagan. He was actually pretty good in the movie. He plays a district attorney who's
Mm,
kind of at the forefront of trying to deal with this issue, which is that in this small town, southern town, the Klan is very much involved in the community, and they kill somebody at the beginning, and there's a witness to it, and it Ronald Reagan's character who is trying to get this person to you know testify, and then they're all scared to testify. Nobody in town wants to testify, so it's one of
right.
them movies. Not a super original plot, but just really strong performances.
Yeah, Ginger
Ginger
Rogers
Rogers
is in
is
the film.
great. Yeah,
Uh, Great actress, Ginger Rogers. Also,
yeah,
Doris Day is in the
yeah,
film as well.
yeah,
Um, I believe
yeah.
playing her sister.
Hmm.
Yeah, the premise of the film is that Ginger Rogers is traveling or moving to a new place for a new job, and she decides to stop over and see her sister, Doris Day, and it turns out her sister's husband is part of the local Ku Klux Klan chapter, if you will, and and Ginger Rogers witnesses that murder that Stephen just mentioned, and things kind of go from there.
The one
But
interesting,
it
the
just
one inter-
shows, yeah, it just shows like that type of evil, that heinousness is so ingrained in that town that it's like if you dismantle it, you dismantle that whole town. Really.
well, the interesting thing about this particular story is that it's a it's the evil at the center of this is the Ku Klux Klan, but the thing that the Ku Klux Klan's known for, which is mostly racism, is not really talked about in this movie.
Mm,
The evil
indeed.
of the movie is that they killed a person, and the person was not even black. They were a white person.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even for the reasons that you typically hear the Klans. It's all about race, a lot of race stuff. No, none of that's really in the movie at all. It's
Ironically,
all
that
yeah,
is notoriously what they are known for is the
yeah.
racism, but their hatred and their their demented doctrine goes so far beyond that.
It
They
does. It does.
basically hate everyone that's not exactly like them.
White Aryan nation.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
they go after like I said, anyone who that's not them.
Well,
Whether
yeah,
you know,
and in this case, the person that they kill, I believe, if I remember correct, it's like they were trying to escape being a member, maybe or something, or they
I think
overheard something,
I think
or
the person was like an undercover journalist trying to
maybe,
expose them.
okay, yeah, maybe, okay,
I believe that was the premise, and yeah, and the reason why I find it so horrifically contemporary is the Klan still exists today.
of
White
course, yeah,
supremacy still exists today, and they still operate out in the open more now than seemingly ever before, and also behind the scenes in small towns, in big cities, everywhere. White supremacy is still an issue, and the Klan is still an issue. And this movie came out in 1951, so this was before the 1960s, this huge civil rights movement, all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And the movie is trying to warn people, I guess, against that type of group. Um, in the 1950s, which I guess no one really listened to because they're still around. Hence the
no,
title of the movie, Storm Warning. Is
yeah,
it's
no,
very on the nose.
yeah, but it's a solid film. I enjoyed watching it.
And you did get to see the Roaring Twenties as well.
I did watch the Roaring Twenties.
What did you think of it? I know
It's
it's not
good.
coming out, but
Well,
it
yeah, it's coming out somewhere. We just don't know
sometime
when.
soon.
But it's yeah, it's good. It's a film about a man who tries to start his life the right way. It's it kind of has a little bit of that um you know best years of our lives kind of thing going, like army guy comes back, tries to start his life, but then he has to deal with reality, and what he realizes is that he's better off being a criminal than trying to have an honest living. Um,
Mm. Yeah, how many
and
times have we seen that in a movie
yeah,
where it's
and
like the easy way is always the moral bad
uh,
way, I guess.
it
You know?
is, yeah, yeah.
And
But it,
Humphrey Bogart is in the film
yeah,
as a heavy.
yeah,
Um, Before Humphrey Bogart really became kind of the leading man in the 1940s, he kind of had those roles where he was just a bad guy, you know,
yeah.
just kind of
In this case, he's a
an
bad
antagonist.
guy who's the bad guy of the other bad guy.
Yeah, yeah, he's like a
Uh,
henchman.
yeah, I mean, he becomes his own guy. You know, his own. He becomes a big player in the story, but over the course of the movie. But it's yeah, it's a solid one. I'd heard of the film, but I'd never seen it, and yeah, it's definitely kind of a roller coaster of a film. It goes through a large period of time throughout the whole, I think, around 2 hour runtime. Um,
Yeah,
but
I remember Priscilla Lane being in the film. She was in Arsenic and Old Lace. She was in Saboteur, the the Alfred Hitchcock film. I always thought she was an underrated actress. I love that movie. I've been waiting seemingly forever for this thing to be put out on Blu-ray. The DVD's been out for a long time, and it's somewhat out of print. Actually, it is out of print. You can still find it for not too expensive, but I've just been waiting for the Blu-ray because I was hoping that it would come out already. So guess I'll have to wait a little longer.
yeah, something coming soon though.
Mm.
Moving on, let's go over to Indicator.
Ooh, flying across the ocean.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Indicator.
Whoosh.
Kino.
Oh no,
Come back.
come back,
Um,
coming back. I
because we got a
didn't
few
get off
things
the
from
line.
there. Nothing crazy.
Just three
Um,
titles,
yeah.
really.
So we got more Burt Reynolds. We got Starting Over, which is from 1979 with Burt Reynolds, Jill Clayburgh,
Mm.
Jill Clayburgh, and Candice Bergman. It's look. I think it's kind of like a rom-com-y type of movie.
It looks very much like it. It's directed by Alan J. Pakula, who directed Clute and Sophie's Choice. I think he directed All the President's Men, or maybe I'm crazy saying that. I don't think that's Alan J. Pakula. Um, I I think that's someone else, but he directed To Kill a Mo no, he was producer on To Kill a Mockingbird. He did direct All the President's Men. I was right.
nice pull.
Nice. I don't know why they didn't include that, but I guess, those other 2 films are also damn good. Sophie's Choice and, um, Klute. But yeah, I haven't seen this, but we're getting so much Burt Reynolds that it's just kind of incredible.
Yeah, you're
Um,
essentially getting his whole filmography through Kino. It
Slowly,
feels
it
like it.
either that Burt box from Umbrella
Yeah,
or slowly getting through, a lot of the stuff from Kino, but Alger Pacula also directed The Parallax View, which
mm,
has a Criterion release. That's a really good, like, 70s political conspiracy film.
yeah.
Super underrated, I think.
I think Imprint put that out as well.
Yes, they also put
Yeah,
out an edition of that as well. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
So more Burt Reynolds,
yes,
1981. We got Paternity.
yeah. Have you seen
Starring
the
Burt.
poster for this?
Yeah, it's like a I Want You poster.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like the "I want you" like Uncle Sam poster, but it's Burt
yeah,
Reynolds pointing at you, and it says he wants you to have his baby, Burt Reynolds, paternity. That's the poster. It's kind of
I'm
brilliant.
sure the women went crazy over that poster
Oh
back in the
yeah,
day.
women and men. Um, this movie does star, of course, Burt Reynolds, Beverly D'Angelo. Um, yeah, I want to get all these films.
No,
I just
you
want to go Burt
don't.
crazy.
No,
There's
you
so much
don't.
Burt Reynolds Blu-rays out there that I don't own. I hate myself for not having. I think I'm just thinking about I still need to see if they put out the Smokey and the Bandit sequels on Blu-ray. I know they were starting to put those out. I know they're not great, but if I'm gonna go Burt Reynolds completionist, I gotta get everything, I guess.
Yeah, you're just it's a dream, man. You just
Mm,
keep talking. You can't complete every actor that you know.
no, it'll happen. Or I'll die trying, I guess,
Yeah,
literally.
Jesus.
Um,
But the last one here is one that was it was brought up a while back ago that this
yes.
was coming, but this is now the full kind of detail on it. Coming May 30th, we get the 4K UHD of 1955's The Night of the Hunter, directed by Charles Lawton, his only film that he directed, as
It is
we
indeed.
say every time. So now we're getting a breakdown of the release. It's a new 4K scan of 35 millimeter original negative. We are getting audio commentary by novelist and critic Tim Lucas. Looks like we got a Love and Hate filmmaker Ernest Dickerson on The Night of the Hunter. I don't know if any of these are new or not.
I think off the top of my head, these are different than the special features that are on the Criterion Blu-ray
Okay.
and Criterion DVD that's been out for a very long time.
Yeah.
That Criterion Blu-ray is one of the first ones I ever remember buying. It's still, a jewel in my collection, but I guess if you want the better picture and sound quality and new features, this
It's yeah,
looks like your thing.
it's gonna be a
Um,
solid one.
yeah, I I'm kind of excited and also kind of wish that Criterion would have, double dipped on this one as well. But you can't have everything,
Yeah,
and
it's one of them
yeah,
things that the more I think about it, we're getting a lot of Criterion these days seems to get a lot of a lot of hate on some things, and
hmm,
why are they doing things, why are they not doing things, why are they re-releasing a lot of their releases in their catalog on 4K right now when people want new movies into the collection on 4K. It's like, well, they're probably trying to hold on to what they have. As you can see, Kino is nipping at their ankles for every legacy release that they have.
right,
And so
right.
they need to put these out in 4K, or maybe they're going to lose the license.
I
You
yeah,
know,
I mean,
you
we
know,
talked about it once upon a time where I think the reason why this keeps happening is because it is essentially, and this is just me guessing, a reacquisition of licensing rights because it's a new format.
yeah,
That's the only, and it's like they already are paying for the rights
yeah.
of
I mean,
these
I mean,
of to put it out on Blu-ray. Now they gotta reacquire the rights to put it out in 4K. That may be a cost thing.
it
That
could
it
be
takes away from them getting other things.
it could be a cost thing, but for them, even if it's a cost thing, um, if they don't do what they have to do to keep some of these films and get the 4K rights, they're potentially causing a lot of collectors to look at their editions as being redundant, because if they go and
Yeah,
get the
the
4Ks, then they
as
don't
time
need them.
goes
Yeah.
on, for example, I was just looking it up. The Blu-ray edition of The Night of the Hunter that Criterion put out came out in 2010,
Yeah.
and that's ancient times when it comes to modern day
Sure.
Blu-rays and
Sure.
just the technology the way it is. So it's like
And some
it
people,
just
like
gets old.
even me, I don't know that I need to get this because I think that the Blu-ray looks pretty good.
Yeah,
But for a lot of
I know what you
collectors,
mean. But I mean, for
it's gonna cause people to think that they need to upgrade, and they might go do it, and then people are not going to buy them Blu-rays from Criterion anymore. I mean, it's not.
yeah, or if, new collectors coming along don't own the movie yet,
Yeah,
they gotta make a choice.
they're gonna you typically go for the better quality one, typically,
Or and yeah, I mean, they're probably gonna be probably cost the same.
roughly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, now that I think about it. But yeah, they'll go with the newer, shinier object, kind of like with any new product, really.
It's
But
yeah,
I mean, this is either way. This is, I think, one of the best movies ever made.
it is.
So
It's
you
great.
better buy it any way you can, really.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna judge you whether you get the Criterion, whether you get this, or whether you even
I
have
think the
some other
Criterion looks great.
release.
I've watched it many times. It still looks good.
Yeah, and
So
that is it from Kino. There's nothing else that they really dropped this week, and other than those 3 major things.
yeah.
So moving on from there, let's go overseas. No, we're not going overseas?
We are going overseas, but not where we were
Oh,
gonna
we
go.
may. What were you gonna say?
Signal One.
Oh, I was going there too.
Damn.
Oh, I even have the page up on
Sneaky.
Blu-ray.com
Sneaky.
right now. Damn. It's like we're in sync. We're simpatico.
No, I think it was it was
Okay,
I could have said anything. I could have
you
said
could have said
anything.
anything. Well, I mean, there was only 3 options.
Gee,
There
sure,
was
sure,
only
sure,
3
sure.
options. There was either going to Australia or we're going to England or wherever Signal 1 is, which I'm
It's
not
in
quite sure.
UK. It's in
Okay.
UK, I believe.
But Signal 1 does have a couple of release announcements, and this is for when is this supposed to come out? I'm not even sure.
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot here.
May.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yes,
Yeah.
May. Both May 22nd, I think, or one's both May 22nd, and the first is the movie called Gold, starring Roger Moore, and
Gold.
the second is Five Corners. You will be not surprised where if you type Gold in on IMDb or Letterboxd, endless
Goldfinger.
amounts of movies show up except for this movie.
What's funny is that it's got Roger Moore in it, and
It does,
didn't
and
he?
this was
He didn't do Goldfinger. That was Sean Connery. But
yeah, it is. Yeah, that's true. But this, speaking of which, this came out in 1974, which is right during his run of being James Bond.
yeah,
So he did this movie called Gold in 1974, directed by Peter R. Hunt. Um, a gold mine a gold mine manager is involved in a web of intrigue at a South African gold mine. Not really descriptive there. This actually already does have a Blu-ray release in the UK from Odeon in 2013. It's got a and it's got a Kino release here in the States in 2018.
Hmm.
Hmm,
I don't
interesting.
feel like I've seen this hanging around before. I don't even remember the Kino release ever coming out. So I don't. This is a film that's new to me. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
in terms of special features, all we've got is a Roger Moore documentary and a still gallery and trailer.
yeah. So not much in the features, but could be an interesting film if you're a Roger Moore fan. But the other film we got here it looks like a more recent film. It's called Five Corners. The description in here says in a Bronx neighborhood of Five Corners, 1964. Change is in the air and unrest is in the streets. Two teenage girls are given away to a pair of delinquents. A high school teacher is shot in the back with an arrow on the way to school, and a psychotic Hines is released from jail only to return to stalking the object of his desire, Linda. Fearing the safety, Linda turns to Harry, who previously helped put Hines in jail. Harry soon finds himself in a morally compromising situation where violence might be his only solution. So this looks like one of them kind of real life, kind of like Lahane, like shit goes down, or maybe like Crash, where it's like normal people that having a tough
Hmm.
go are kind of interweaving and connecting in certain
It seems a
ways.
lot more dark and twisted. Have you seen the cast for this film?
I
Um,
think I see Jodie Foster on the front.
yeah, Jodie Foster, Tim Robbins, John Turturro. Uh,
That's a
Pretty decent
cast.
cast, and this came out in '87. So this was
Wow, that's young Jodie.
well, I mean, it's about 10 years or so after Taxi Driver. Actually, a little more than that. But this is obviously before Tim Robbins was in The Player, before he was in Shawshank Redemption, before he was in a lot of the movies that we know of him being in. But this was of course his follow up to the classic, the indomitable Howard the Duck, which came out in 1986, which Tim Robbins was in, which I always forget that he was in that movie because that movie just completely empty escapes from my mind. Um, I watched that when I was a
Mm,
little kid, and I have a
mm.
very vivid memory of seeing it and just the craziness of it all.
I yeah,
Did
it's
you
one of
ever
the
see it growing up or
no,
as an adult?
no,
No, you
no,
skipped
never.
out on it. Lucky you.
It never got to my eyes. I remember things like Harry and the Hendersons and
Mm.
even Alf. I remember Alf. Some
I remember that too. I watched the Harry and the Hendersons TV series before I watched the movie.
oh wow.
That's I guess I kind of went to it
Huh.
backwards. And yeah, speaking of which, wasn't there an Alf movie that just got announced to be that was coming on Blu-ray?
I have no idea.
I thought I saw that recently. Maybe I just tripped that up. Oh, here it is. Yeah, Project Alf.
Oh Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
yeah, yeah. It says Liberation Hall is preparing a Blu-ray release of Dick Lowry's Project Alf from 1996, starring Miguel Ferrer. And then of course the rest of the cast there. Yeah, it's scheduled to be released on June 13th. The description here,
What we all asked for.
the description here. Well, I promise we'll get back to Tim Robbins soon, but Hide your cats because the mensch from Melmac is back and in the custody of the U.S. government, and he's got Colonel Milfoil, Martin Sheen, trying to get him declared a threat to national security. Luckily, his considerable charm works even on U.S. Air Force personnel. Um, when are we getting Alf on Blu-ray? Come on, just make it
It
happen already.
it
Never
ev-
going to happen.
anything's possible.
Anything's possible. Very true. But yeah, so Five Corners actually does intrigue me very much.
Yeah.
It feels just it looks. I don't know if you've seen some of the stills from this or the trailer. It looks very aesthetically gritty and it's just a dark tone to it. Really dark tone. Um, so that's definitely something that intrigues me. But moving on from there, let's now stay where we are geographically and go with Indicator.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't fight you. So Indicator once again are showing us their 4K muscles. They have been working on some a lot of they told us at the at the beginning of the year that they've been doing this for a while. They've been working on some stuff and they got 2 more 4K releases for us with also some Blu-ray editions as well if that's not your thing. If you don't care about getting the 4K, if you want the little bit cheaper edition on Blu-ray, I'm sure it's going to look amazing either way. But the 2 releases we got here, we got the film from 1971, Cold Eyes of Fear. And then in 1973, we have the film Black Magic Rites. So yeah, I know nothing about either of these. I even tried looking for these to watch and could not find them. And I know you somehow found them.
Oh yeah,
Or at
they're
least,
streaming. Well, Cold Eyes of Fear is streaming on Canopy.
yeah, I don't
If
have it.
you Well, for those of you who have, I mean, many of you may not because
My library won't allow, doesn't
yeah,
have.
not every. I'm just saying,
Yeah,
Canopy is streaming service through your local library, but
yeah,
like Steven just is going to say, not every library subscribes to
yeah.
Canopy.
They suck.
So yeah, they suck. Can
Sorry, local library that gets paid by
Yeah,
the local government.
Canopy has a lot of this stuff. I don't know who at the local library is like acquiring these movies, but
I
yeah,
don't know how it
they
works,
got
but
them.
we'll get somebody from Canopy on this podcast and ask them about how this shit works. Because I need Canopy. I'm just gonna go to my library and say what's the deal with? Can we get Canopy here?
I know. Come on now, get it together. So Cold Eyes of Fear. These are both. I believe these are both Italian horror films. But Cold Eyes of Fear. Um,
It,
so
it seems more like in the giallo
it very much is.
vein. Yeah. So you
So
have to
the premise
talk
for this
about them.
film, I just because I watched it earlier in the week, I'm trying to refresh my memory. Things are a little fuzzy up there. So, respectable lawyer Peter picks up Anna, an Italian woman of dubious virtue, from the club and takes her back to his uncle's place. They soon discover they are not alone. A gunman is waiting for them. And basically, what happens is he kind of takes them hostage, essentially. What this doesn't tell you is that that this guy Peter is a lawyer and he's also the nephew of a big time, I think, lawyer as well. And this is kind of like a revenge situation going on here for some past deeds
Yeah.
that's been going on, and they're kind of in the wrong place at the wrong time and get caught up in it. Um, so that's this film. I've watched it and I thought it was actually pretty good. Very tense, very dark, very you know, had a great amount of just like fright and tension to it and just really good. Like it is like
The
you said, Steven, it's in that kind of giallo type of feel of the 70s.
mhm.
Really, really good and nice and stylized, but gritty as well.
Well, I was
The
gonna
other
say.
film.
Well,
Okay, go on.
let me ask you this. Do you feel like this film would be a good 4K like visually? Did it feel like a 4K
What's interesting is I
upgrade?
was just going to comment on the second film probably is going to look even better in 4K than this one is.
Uh-huh.
The thing with Cold Eyes of Fear is that it all takes place at night indoors. So you're not going to really get not a lot of bright colors or things like that that are going to like flesh out the HDR or really flesh out the 4K. or anything like that. So, but this other film, Black Magic Rights, or it has a different title, a title that's a way more appropriate. Not appropriate, but it kind of makes more sense when you watch the premise of the film. The Reincarnation of Isabel is the
Hmm.
alternate title. As a group of vampires keep the body of a witch in a castle cellar. They require virgin blood to resurrect her. That's not just the case. A party of people arrive and things kick off. That's the premise on IMDb. They don't only need her. They don't only need blood of virgins to resurrect her. They also need like their body parts as well, eyes, hearts,
Ah,
stuff
yeah.
like that to resurrect this vampire queen person. The movie takes place um there's a lot of flashback to where we get a lot of the backstory as to what happened to this woman and her lover and why things are going on the way they are in the present to kind of resurrect her. And then there's like a whole detective trying to solve these murders and disappearances that keep happening. And but there is some psychedelic crazy shit happening in this movie. A lot of sexual situations as well, going on, um, just kind of randomly from time to time. A lot of that 70s kind of adult film soundtracks going on during these scenes. Very trippy, extremely trippy.
All right.
So that's why, like, when I when I'm thinking of the 4K, the HDR, and all that stuff, I'm like a lot of colors and trippy situations are popping off on the screen, kind of hitting you uh in the very audio and visual way. So I'm like, that could make this movie really pop. Really, really pop. Yeah, it's another film that I think is also kind of okay. It's not particularly great, but I don't think it's terrible, perfectly watchable. Um, but man, it is trippy as hell at points where you don't really realize what the heck is going on, and you kind of just lose the plot. Then they end up coming back towards the plot after going into kind of trippy crazy land. It's called black magic for a reason. There's some magic things going on in here. Uh, but these are two very interesting releases from Indicator. Once again, them kind of unearthing something from some unique corner of genre film. You know, it's not what you expect, but also kind of awesome at the same time.
Yeah. Once again, they're keeping us on our toes. They're not going with what I think people would say out of the first 5 years of Indicator's history, we would kind of expect. We're getting a lot of different weird genre films from different corners of the globe, Italian stuff, Mexican stuff. They're really pulling no punches.
And I think these are both going to be like their deluxe special edition type packaging.
Oh yeah, they are. Yeah.
Um,
Um,
at least Cold Eyes Affair is because it's coming with an 80-page book, so that thing's gonna be in there. The second is also coming with an 80-page book, so they've got to be the thicker
yeah,
like
they're the thicker
packaging.
the digi pack or whatever you want to call it. Um, but
Just-
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
these
loaded with special features as well.
as they usually are. A lot of new features, 2023 features. Um, yeah. I mean, me, I'm a big Indicator fan, so I will probably be picking these up at some point.
Somebody on the Blu-ray.com, they had the press release and they have the comments section. Someone wrote more Italian sleaze in 4K. Yes, please. I
ah,
guess I guess that's the reaction you want to have.
yeah, that's the crowd. Well, let's come home for a second. I do want to come
Hmm.
home for a second, because we're going to talk about Criterion Collection.
Oh, okay. We are back home.
And so with the Criterion Collection, we are once again getting some upgrades. We did already discuss part of this release which was the Pasolini 101 set. So we will defer to that last episode if you want to hear us talk about that. But along with that, we got now 4 other releases that are for Criterion's June announcements. And so 2 of them are upgrades, 4K upgrades, and then the other 2 are new to the collection. The upgrade, starting with the upgrades, we are getting a 4K upgrade of Terry Gilliam's Time Bandits, which I think has kind of been teased to be coming at some point. Is this exciting for you? Time Bandits in 4K? You
I
know me,
don't.
I'm not a super fan of
I mean, I
Gilliam.
know a lot of people love this movie, so I won't begrudge them or say anything to the contrary because I think it's classic Terry Gilliam. I remember when this Blu-ray came out and the buzz around the Blu-ray was like super hyped. They're like, "Oh, finally, Time Bandits is getting a Blu-ray release." Felt like that happened just the other day, and now we're getting a 4K release. Um, but yeah, this is his film from I think early on in his career, yeah, 1981. So this was, post Monty Python and the Holy Grail, but pre Brazil. And this movie is, a favorite for a lot of people. I saw it, when I bought the Blu-ray years ago, and it's people jumping around in time, but with the Terry Gilliam flavor, where you see all kind of like historical figures portrayed by actors you may know. For example, Napoleon is portrayed by Ian Holm. Agamemnon is portrayed by Sean Connery, and
Yeah,
then of course you've got like some Monty Python people show up in the film as well. And yeah, there's been a lot of Gilliam this year for Criterion.
yeah,
It's it
yeah,
you got Barry
I,
Munchausen, you got
yeah.
this that got an upgrade. What recently just got an upgrade? Um, the Fisher King.
Fisher
So
King.
you're
Yeah,
getting a lot of Gilliam.
yeah. I mean, they probably, he's probably been easy to work with, maybe, and
Well, I think
just
also, and they've had the licensing for these movies for forever. So, and I think they probably got them from Universal rather cheaply, and they've just been holding on to them forever. And this is probably just an easy upgrade for Criterion to make.
maybe,
They
yeah.
just poured over all the special features. They
It's kind
don't
of a
gotta
he's kind of a
reacquire things.
legacy director of the collection where they got
Mm,
a lot of his
Fear and
filmog
Loathing.
yeah, a lot of his filmography, so they're making sure that it all stays in the collection in the best version
Yeah, if you
possible.
don't have these already, I suggest getting them. I don't know if I'm going to jump at the chance to upgrade these right away. You know what I
Sure.
mean? I'm kind of, I contradict myself by saying that a lot, but these I'm kind of content with having the Blu-rays for. Baron Munchausen, I don't own at all, so obviously when I buy that, I'll, get the 4K of it. But some of these other ones, I don't feel like I have the need or urge to upgrade right away.
Yeah. Well, I know one you're gonna upgrade, and that's this
Mm,
other upgrade.
yeah, now let me throw everything I just said in the trash and
Yeah. Yeah.
what movie you're talking about?
Rules of the game.
Oh, yes, Jean
Very early,
Renoir.
yeah, very early in the collection film. So I think you know this will be an interesting one to see how people react to buying this one because it is one that's been in the collection for a while. So it definitely has an early Blu-ray, and it's once again it's a legacy film, a legacy director of the collection that we have a lot of his stuff. So I think it was important to make sure that this got in the collection in 4K. And yeah, I mean it's satirical film about rich people.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
Never
and
gets old.
it never gets old. It's the story that keeps on. It's the
It's
gift
a
that keeps
story that
on
keeps
giving.
on living.
Yeah, it keeps on giving. The story keeps on giving. Um, you know, yeah. I mean, French
I mean,
French director.
I was just gonna say, I don't mean to cut you off, but they just put out the movie Triangle of Sadness, which is a movie that came out last year. It's literally a satire about rich people.
Yeah, they're
It's
still
kind of
doing it.
like the rules of the game for modern society.
Yeah, they're still doing it, man. And yeah, I mean, once again, it's same. And this is the main complaint: is there is no new features on any of these releases. Something that just I guess for them, just cost effective wise, they're just not adding to the features list. But the other two films that are actually new additions to the collection, one one I'm really excited that it's in the collection, but I do already own it in a 4K, and that is The Servant from
Mm,
Joseph Losey. Fantastic movie. I know you got a chance to
yeah, the
finally
movie's
watch it.
amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing, right?
Movie's fucking
Yeah,
incredible. Um,
yeah,
yeah, unfortunately, I mean, we were just talking about the extras package for Who put it out? Studio Canal put it out, right?
Yes, yes.
That extra package is way more extensive than this one,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah.
And also, unfortunately, I'm pretty sure it's different extras package as well. But there is a new program by uh, on the director Joseph Losey by Imogen Sarah Smith. There's an interview with Losey from the '70s. There's an interview with the screenwriter from the '90s. But I think the one thing that does carry over is maybe the interviews with the actors that you got here. That may also be on the Studio Canal release. Don't quote me on that. But
I see it. I see it. I can't reach it though. It's too far away.
oh, it's so close yet so
It's
far
just,
away.
ah.
But yeah, that 4K release from Studio Canal, I heard looks incredible.
It is.
Unfortunately, this is
I've watched it. It's great.
yeah,
Yeah, it's fantastic.
unfortunately, this is just a Blu-ray release and not a 4K release. I don't know who owns the 4K release rights here in the US. Obviously, Criterion doesn't, or else they would have put it out in 4K.
Yeah,
That would have been nice. Um, but yeah, the movie, whether it's Blu-ray, whether it's 4K, whether it's whatever, it's an amazing film. Like it's a fantastic film. Um, like I was watching it for the first time. I'm like, oh, this is really, really good. Then the second half, I think, takes it up to even an higher notch for me. That's where it really sold me. So for those of you who haven't seen the film, um, so yet again, it's kind of another satire, you know, thematically kind of commentary on certain classisms, certain things like that. So um, there's this kind of upper crust, kind of aristocratic guy who hires a manservant, portrayed by Dirk Bogarde, and what happens is he treats him like one would do a manservant, and what happens over the course of the film, without getting into a lot of the details, is the relationship changes for several reasons, and things kind of get flipped on its head in terms of the power dynamic between the two characters.
yeah.
And there's so much more detail, so much more to go into, but it's really
It
something
yeah.
you have to discover your own.
It's not like a satire in the sense of it being
Well,
necessarily.
satire in
It's
the
not
sense of social,
comical.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
satire in
yeah,
the sense of social commentary,
yeah,
as
yeah.
often satire is used.
Yeah. So it's pretty. It's it's a film you got to. It's not necessarily an easy watch. It's a lot of talking, a lot of conversation. But it is one that if you're really just with it on its wavelength and you watch it, and it's just beautiful to watch. It's a beautiful looking film, just stark black and white, just amazing. But it really gets under your skin as the
That
movie moves along.
yeah, that
Just
third
what's
act
going
is
on.
just
Yeah, yeah,
takes it up to a whole new level of just what the movie actually is saying. Like, it kind of just lays all of its cards out on the table for you as a viewer.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and the acting is really fantastic,
Hmm.
just incredibly nuanced. Yeah, when I saw this was getting a release, I was like, yeah, I'm glad it is, because at least more people can probably see it. More people who are more Criterion enthusiasts or Criterion collectors, who perhaps don't know of the Studio Canal release or just didn't buy it up until this point. At least now they've got an opportunity to get it. But we do have one more film that they are putting out that is brand new to the collection.
Definitely, and we got "Medicine for Melancholy," which is the first film from Barry Jenkins,
It is indeed.
he's always kind of been a supporter of the Criterion Collections, kind of been hanging around, and we were kind of all waiting for when he was going to join, and here we are with his first film, and I can definitely see like Moonlight making its way eventually, and
I would even
even
say, if Beale Street Could Talk would be
yeah,
another one.
I agree.
I
I
pretty
think yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Barry Jenkins did a Criterion Closet video a few years
Oh
ago.
yeah, yeah, he did. I believe so. Yeah.
You probably right when Moonlight was coming out.
I think he's even done some features. I think he's done a
Oh yeah,
couple,
yeah, yeah.
maybe a couple like interviews or like
Mm.
even maybe a commentary, maybe. But I know I believe he's done something with the Criterion Collection, like features wise before. So
Now, have you seen this film?
I didn't get a chance to watch it.
Okay. I just
Yeah,
didn't know if you had seen it before.
yeah,
So this came out in 2008, which I believe was what, 8 years before Moonlight came out. Um, but this film is very much, I mean, they kind of describe it here as a lo-fi romance, which it really is, but it's more than that, but it's kind of accurate. So this film stars Wyatt Cenac and Tracy Higgins. Wyatt Cenac, I remember being on The Daily Show for a while. Went back when Jon Stewart was hosting The Daily Show, and he was one of the kind of like correspondents there and whatnot, and comedians. I've seen him do stand up and things like that. But in this film, Wyatt Cenac plays this character called Micah, and Tracy Higgins plays this character Joe or Joanne, I believe. And they have this kind of one night stand, and the movie opens with the kind of the morning after and the awkwardness of the morning after, specifically when you become so inebriated and get intoxicated, you don't remember anything of what occurred the night before, which I'm sure perhaps many people listening have had that happen. And they are kind of complete strangers. They don't really even know each other's names, let alone any other details whatsoever. And the film kind of spends its time with these two characters getting to know each other, getting a lot of walking and talking, a lot of kind of that indie 2000s feel of just really down to earth, kind of gritty filmmaking, guerrilla style, almost documentary, uh, cinema verite esque filmmaking, where just two people talking and walking on the street and just talking about random things. Uh, and it's interesting, kind of just the how it's commenting on human relationships and things like that, and just human connection or lack thereof, really in this situation. Um, but I really enjoyed the film for what it is. If you're into that indie film 2000s realm, this movie's definitely for you. But don't expect a lot of kind of bombastity with it. Don't expect a lot of like swooning romance. Basically, what I'm saying is don't expect Before Sunrise or Before Sunset or something like that.
All right.
It's not quite to that level of, I think, nuanced romance, like really gripping you type of stuff. This is way more standoffish, way more loosely connected stuff. Um, but I enjoyed it for what it is. I like seeing, Barry Jenkins in an early type of work, him just trying to like establish his craft, establish his aesthetic, and establish working with themes and working with actors and stuff like that. I kind of can't wait to get this just to see if I can glean anything from him. I wish they had done um something new with Barry Jenkins. I know there's a new commentary with him, so that would be fascinating to watch. And there's an old commentary on here with him as well. So it's
Okay.
kind of be interesting to see the contrast of where he was back in 2008 and where he is now. He's an incredibly intelligent individual when it comes to cinema. And it comes to kind of the way in which he makes his film. Just listen to him describe the way he made Moonlight and the reason behind certain things in that film. Yeah, I can't. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for this. I'm excited just for them to add something new and
Yeah.
fresh to the collection. Uh,
Well, I
but yeah,
mean,
that's
they do
they
that.
do. You're right. I mean, last month we did get Petite Maman, which is new and literally a newer film
I
and
mean,
fresh. And then we
yeah.
got finally get Targets coming out. Um,
We've gotten newer
Small
movies all the
Axe.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Small
small.
Axe
Yeah,
is a new
yeah,
stuff. Triangle of Sadness I just
yeah.
mentioned
Portrait of a
is
Lady on
new.
Fire a couple years ago. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And
We
we're
just
getting, something that, is just starting to come out now or going to come out very, very soon is Chilly Scenes of Winter, the
that's it. Just
Joe
came
Nicholson
out. It
Silver film.
just came out. Yeah.
Yeah. It's, people keep your eyes out for that. And then, of course, Inland Empire by
I
David Lynch is coming out
I think
ASAP.
I'm gonna get Chili Scenes of Winter on the flash sale when that comes soon, because
Yes.
that should be coming soon.
It should be coming soon. And if not, I guess wait until July, which will be here sooner than we think,
If that's
probably.
still a thing.
Yeah, we say it every year, and
I
it
say
keeps
that just to
happening.
keep my expectations down.
Low, yeah, you gotta keep them low. Yeah,
Just in
because
case if it ever does happen, I won't be so sad.
life has a way of disappointing you, so it's better to prepare for disappointment,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that like when something good happens, it boosts it up, it makes it
Yeah,
that
yeah.
much more better.
Exactly. Exactly.
So but that's Criterion Collection announcements for oh goodness, what month are we in now? I don't even remember.
June releases.
These are the June releases, just in time for my birthday. So I got
Well, that's good.
Pasolini and Barry Jenkins and Jean Renoir for my birthday.
Well, there's a lot of good presents, I think, in this Viavision imprint announcement as well. A
Mm,
lot of good stuff in here. I'm
yeah,
excited about this
solid.
month.
This is a solid slate.
I love this slate. This is one of my
It's
favorite slates, I
fantastic.
think, from them in a while. Their June releases. I would say this is a very lustful slate.
Oh, we do have
Uh,
two films that do
uh,
deal with lust and love.
I would say at least three. I
Actually,
mean, maybe
there's three in here.
that are really
Um,
lustful.
I will
Um,
get yeah, I'll get into
yeah,
all of them.
but
Um,
I saw a few of these myself.
nice, nice, nice.
So starting here, we have from 2000 the film Melina. And then from 1984, we have the film Bounty, starring Anthony Hopkins, Mel Gibson. We have from 2020, a newer film. We got Leap. And then from 1999, we got No One Less, which I believe is a is that a Zhang Yimou film?
It is indeed.
Yeah. So they did that big box set, and then I think they've had a couple releases separate from that. So they
Yeah.
keep doing more Zhang Yimou. And then we have from 2004, we have My Summer of Love, which is a Palzowski film. Palzowski?
I think it's Paul is oh boy, I probably if I don't
Palazowski? It's
yeah,
a Polish
Polakowski.
Polakowski.
I'm gonna get into it. Um,
He's the Cold War director of
yeah, he also directed Ida or
Ida.
Ida. Um,
Yeah,
he's kind of directed two of the best international films I've seen in the last decade. So
he's good. He's good. And then the
last one,
last one's from 1992 is Damage, which
yes.
has one of your favorite actresses,
Oh,
Juliette Binoche in it.
Juliette Binoche.
Yep. But back at the top, Melina.
Yes,
Um,
back on the
we
top.
have Monica
Bellucci.
Bellucci.
Yeah, Monica Bellucci.
And this is a coming of age film.
Mm.
It's an Italian film set in that area. And it's kind of a small, I guess it's not small town for Italy is like a nice square, like brick built, stone buildings and everything.
Yeah,
It's very,
it looks
very
like the most
beautiful.
gorgeous place on earth, but it's not really.
It's a small town, but
It's set on the island of it's actually set on Sicily in
gotcha. Yeah.
I believe it's like a city or it looks like a village to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And you know who directed this movie, right?
I did. It's
Bobby, would you say it?
Don't ask me to pronounce it.
Okay.
Just you say it.
Giuseppe Tornatore, who directed
Now my turn. Giuseppe Donatore.
yeah, who directed Cinema Paradiso.
Yes. It
Uh,
has that same feel
it's got
to it.
that vibe. It's got that
Yeah.
you know what? It's got that that musical score to it that puts you in that vibe.
It's got an innocence to it that you can definitely correlate to this film.
It's a film dealing primarily, to compare it to Cinema Paradiso, about coming of age, like you just said.
Sexual awakening more
Yeah,
than
I mean,
anything.
this film more about sexual awakening than
That's what I'm
Cinema
saying.
Paradiso.
Of course.
But I mean, just it's young Italian, character growing up, coming of age, and learning about the world.
But mostly about his sexual awakening.
Yeah, I mean,
mean,
because Monica Bellucci,
she plays a female who
fascinating.
it's a great story. It's a great it's
Yeah, she's not really a character in the film. She's just this entity of
she's an object of his
imagination.
desire that the thing is that to everybody in this town, she's this object of desire.
And she's
But
something different to like everyone,
yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say is like in a way he's the only one that really sees her for who she really is. Even though he is lusting after her because he's a young kid, his
right.
hormones are going crazy, but he is seeing her in moments that nobody else sees her and probably knows her better than the only person that knows her better is her husband, who is off at war right now,
Yeah,
which is kind of the big part of the story is that she's kind of left alone. And in this town alone and nobody there to love her. And then, so all the men are kind of going after her,
right,
because she's alone.
Yeah, we should specify this film does take place in 1940 Italy, which is obviously right in the early days of World War II. It does take place over like kind of several years, I would say, or a little bit of that early 40s timeline, where you see kind of the political arena or world in which like this young boy is growing up in, fascist Italy, Mussolini Italy, and then of course World War II and the way things kind of transpire there. But the Monica Bellucci character, she like I said, kind of so many things to so many different people. To the to the young boy, she's an object of sexual desire the same way as the men. But the women of that village or of that area, absolutely despise her, and not even for who she is, but because of the way in which the society views her. Everything in the film is almost viewed from everyone else's perspective except from Monica Bellucci's perspective. You know what I mean? Like she doesn't really get a chance to be her own character. We just kind of know her based off of how other people view her.
Yeah.
It's fascinating the way in which that looks, and it's fascinating the way in which it connects to our modern society, where in our internet world, in our internet culture, how we view people based off of pictures we see on the internet, videos we see, posts on social media, whatever the case may be. We prejudge everyone when we judge everyone in a certain way based off of not a lot of context, kind of just our own opinions. And oftentimes our own opinions can be very, very wrong. It happens to us all the time. And the film is just really just deeply fascinating, I find, from a cultural perspective, from a story perspective. But the film is also incredibly funny at times as well,
Oh yeah, yeah.
specifically in the ways in which it depicts the young boy's adolescence and coming of age and the sexual awakening, and it does so in a rather funny way in his exploration of that, and
There's so
especially like the relationship with his family.
his
Yeah,
family stuff is
is like
ridiculous. Yeah.
ridiculous. Like his
Yeah.
father's just yelling at him, his mother can't
It's
like
almost that cliche Italian thing where they're like yelling at all the time and like, hey, pinching
well,
their ears and like
yeah,
it's like
any like kind of any European-based family is really
yeah.
like that, specifically one based in religion. Like at one point, the mother like tries to have him like exercise because of all of his sexual desires. Is like overwhelming to her, and it's like it's funny because like everyone kind of goes through this in some way, shape, or form. Like it's been part of our society and culture, the adolescence and growing up and sexual maturity pretty much forever. Yet
Yeah.
every generation, like the family or the parents, like just don't know how to process it, even
Yeah.
though it's been happening forever. Yeah, I thought this film was
It's
fantastic.
amazing. I really
Um,
enjoyed it. There's
there's yeah, I was just gonna say, go on.
there's a bunch of features on here. We
Mm,
got some making of documentary. We got some backstage featurettes, interviews with the director, and Ennio Morricone did the score for this. This is getting it's got a new 2K scan. Um, and one big thing that's important with this is that it does have the uncut Italian version, which
yes,
is
I was just gonna mention that.
yeah, the version we probably both watched was the US cut, which
Oh, no,
very very
I went to try to
oh,
find the uncut version.
so you did find the uncut version.
I did. I
Oh
did find
wow.
it I did find because it is streaming on Paramount Plus right now in the hour and 32-minute US cut,
That's the one I watched.
which is
Yeah.
cut by about 16 minutes as compared to the hour and 48-minute Italian cut. I made sure to go and try to find the uncut version just because I wanted to see the movie, the way it was
Well,
intentionally
essentially, the
be
stuff that
seen.
got cut out apparently was a lot more of the nudity that
Mm,
involved him and a prostitute.
yes.
That he has a scene, and you know, there's a lot of scenes of
There's a lot of
him
oh, yeah, there's a lot of sexuality in the film.
sexuality, him envisioning scenes with Monica Bellucci, and things like that. So there is a lot of nudity. There's some nudity in this film. Um, yeah, it's
What
really good and
yeah.
innocent yet very direct and un unclint clint you're not shying away from the kind of more
I
um
didn't find it
you know
gratuitous, though.
no, it wasn't. It was
I
innocent.
didn't yeah, it
The thing
was
is we
mm,
shouldn't always look at this stuff as being you know taboo. It's not. It's everybody. It's just something that is part of everybody's you know life in some way. Whether it's it's typically something we're all going to deal with in our life. So
very much so.
it's not something we should be shying away from. And yeah, sure, the kid's a little bit of a perv. He is essentially, and by the end of the story, doing something very he's a very sincere character, but
mm,
he's essentially a peeping tom
for
through the
for a
first.
good part of the movie.
Yeah, he's watching her like he's going above and beyond to watch her. but at the
Yeah,
at you know, it's
the movie is not exactly
but he's a kid.
it's not like a super moral white knight type of movie or chivalrous type of thing.
Yeah,
It's very honest and open and kind of truthful, really, when
yeah,
you think about it. Um, and that's kind of what I really like about the film, warts and all, as they say. But yeah, this is a great release. I remember seeing this movie like, so many times when I was going shopping in the early 2010s for DVDs, and this movie would always be in, like, the international film section of many of stores I would go to, and I never bought it, but I knew who Monica Bellucci was, at the time, and yeah, of course, if you don't know who Monica Bellucci is, I mean, yet again, kind of another quasi connection. We were just talking about Irreversible with Alexandra
yep,
Heller-Nicholas, and she's in that film. And I think that's the
yep,
film she did a couple of years after this film, and she's been in a lot of things. She was in, um, she's been in many things. I think she was in Brotherhood of the Wolf, which we just talked about. It's getting a 4K release now, a couple of years ago. She was, of course, in Matrix Reloaded
yeah,
and Matrix
yeah,
Revolutions. She's in the movie Shoot 'Em Up. Remember that?
sure.
Oh, man, I remember
Clive
that.
Owens, yeah,
Yeah, she's been in a lot of things, and for me, most recently, not even recently now because time just keeps moving, she was in an episode of Twin Peaks, The Return, but as herself. But there's a character of Gordon Cole portrayed by David Lynch, and he has a dream in the film about Monica Bellucci, and then he's just describing the dream. I don't even think she has any lines in it, and it's just Monica Bellucci, like like, on screen, and it's like I remember him saying very vividly, he's like, "Oh, I had that Monica Bellucci dream again last night," or something like that, and then Monica Bellucci's in the show for, like, a scene, and I'm like, I guess so." I mean, it just I remember that very vividly, but, yeah, always been a big fan of hers, great actress, great release, but we gotta move on to a couple of these other ones.
yeah.
Um, do what did you think of The Bounty?
Um,
'Cause this is
solid.
a bigger release from them.
It's a solid movie. I mean, it's not my favorite version of the story, which
Mm,
there's been many. I
yes.
still kind of go back to the kind of the original, Clark Gable. Yeah,
It is
Clark
Clark
Gable.
Gable,
Yeah, it
yep,
is Clark Gable.
and Charles
Charles
Laughton.
Lawton. I kind of still go back to that one as probably I mean, I haven't seen every version, but that out of the ones I've seen, that's still kind of my favorite version. I do like Anthony Hopkins' performance in this movie. I'd say out of everything, that was the thing that was most interesting. But they really do, they really apparently this is arguments about this version. They do say that this is kind of one of the more faithful versions of the book.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and so what essentially happens is this crew goes on a mission and they find, I believe it's Hawaii, the island of Hawaii,
Well,
somewhere in them
they go to
islands.
Tahiti.
Tahiti, okay. And so then they kind of stay there and kind of get kind of sucked into the life there, which is a very great life of a bunch of women, kind of what like going to Hawaii,
I
just
guess
very
so, yeah.
nice, laid back, drinking, having a good time, and not having that seaman life where they're giving orders all the time. They're working all the time, and so they spend time a good amount of time there, and then when it's time to leave, some men don't want to really leave. And they on their as they're in Anthony Hopkins' character, essentially kind of is he pushes it off as long as possible. Like he really doesn't like, he's not comfortable with them being there. um but he's trying to let the men have their time, I guess. But
Yeah, what happens is they're stuck in Tahiti because I think it has to do with some type of storm season that's going on, and they're basically stuck there for an extra, I think, 4 months or so than they were supposed to be. They're supposed to just go there to get, like, these plants to bring back
it's like, yeah, it's a
to
mission for,
England.
yeah,
And I guess these plants only grow in the South Pacific, only grow on Tahiti. Keep in mind this takes place in the late
17 something.
1700s.
Yeah.
Think of the times where like Captain Cook, like discovered a lot of the areas down there, like Hawaii, like Australia, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And um, they're stuck there, and then kind of a lot of things just go bad on their trip, where they get stuck in storms, they get lost. It's taking too long. Traveling at sea isn't easy, especially
Yeah.
back then. There's no GPS, there's no cell phones, there's no nothing. And it's the South Pacific, and it's just wide open water everywhere. But as you're saying, like on their way back is when they mutiny, and it's a notorious like real life story of mutiny on the Bounty.
Yeah.
They don't really, in the end, they kind of don't really know what happened. It's kind of speculation as to what ended up happening with the Bounty and with all that kind of stuff. But this movie starred a lot of stars at the time, and a lot of people who would then become stars. Steven, did you notice Liam Neeson in the film?
Did Liam Neeson, dude, this is filled up to the brim with actors you would recognize. I mean, there's a few of them, and I don't even know their names. Laurence Olivier's in the film too,
Yes,
as well.
he is in the film. That's got to be one of his later
Yeah,
roles.
yeah,
But this is directed by Roger Donaldson, and coincidentally, or not even coincidentally, interestingly enough, this film was actually a passion project for David Lean, who ended up leaving the project in 1981. It was replaced by Roger Donaldson. And Roger Donaldson is a director who probably directed a few films people know of. He directed um he directed Species, he directed Cocktail, Dante's Peak, The
wow,
Getaway, Cadillac Man,
yeah.
um, No Way Out with is that Kevin Costner?
Kevin Costner, yeah.
Mhm. Um, yeah, so
Oh,
it's
and
I
I forgot
oh,
Daniel Day-Lewis is in the movie too.
yes, Daniel Day-Lewis is in the film. He
Yeah,
plays the original, like, first mate.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just a
It's
fascinating
it's
adaptation. This has
a
been
big
adapted
movie.
several times.
Yeah,
1935, like Steven mentioned, with Charles Laughton and uh, Clark Gable. It was adapted, I think, in 1962 with Marlon Brando in the film, famously so. And those two, and this one are kind of the three major adaptations, at least that I can remember off the top of my head. It's a sweeping, big budgeted kind of epic film, from the 80s. Uh, I don't mind. I thought it was rather solid. I mean, you got Mel Gibson
it's
kind of overacting a bit here and there and
he's not
whatnot,
he's
but
not good with that accent. The
yeah, I was
accent's
gonna say the accent is not really there. Like,
it's not good.
it's not. It's not like it's in and out, more out than in and whatnot. But
Yeah.
this is a big time release from them because it's one of their bigger kind of special edition box sets. Looks like 2 disc edition.
Two versions of the movie, I believe.
I think
Uh,
it's got. I was gonna
no,
say
no, it's
no,
one
no, it's
version.
not. It's just the bonus
It's
disc.
bonus.
Yeah.
It's got a whole disc for
But
bonus disc.
all
Yeah,
of the bonuses looks like new stuff, at least
yeah,
most of it.
yeah,
You've got a making of, you've got new you got an interview with the director. Wow,
yeah,
that's kind of amazing. The history of the adaptation, you've got all kinds of stuff. I believe it comes with a booklet as well. So this is one of their bigger, more thicker deluxe editions. But moving on from there, let's move on to Not One Less, which is the Zhang Yimou film from 1997, I think. Oh no, the
yeah.
the book came out in 1997. I think this came out later
Um,
than that,
90,
maybe
90, 99.
99.
Yeah,
So like Steven,
didn't see
yeah,
this one.
did you?
No, I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Didn't see.
So Not One Less is a really small kind of intimate film that is in very much in the line of kind of like a neo-realism type of film, a bit. So the premise of the film is this young 13-year-old girl really um, takes over teaching a class of like young elementary school kids of varying ages in this really, really super small town in rural China. And she's 13 years old. And what happens is the teacher who needs to go away for a month because of a sick relative, I think a sick mother or something. So she needs to basically be a substitute teacher. But the thing is she doesn't really have much education herself, so she kind of has having a tough time dealing with teaching small children. But that's kind of initially what the premise is. But the whole idea is that the teacher tells her before he leaves that we've already lost so many children already. I can't lose any more students. So don't let anybody leave. Basically, you have to fill in for a month and just do the job well enough to not lose any more students. And it's a really a social commentary on impoverished rural areas of China being so impoverished and so destitute that the children cannot afford to go to school because they're their lives don't can't allow it because of the financial situation that they're in. So there's a whole like political, thematic, societal culture thing going on there within this film. But for her, one of her students ends up leaving and and kind of going to the big city and trying to find a job because he's too poor. He's too poor to go to school, and his family's too poor. So she decides to go and get him and bring him back, and that's kind of the main part and heart of this movie. And she's doing it through kind of sheer force of will. It shows the contrast between the super small rural village and the super wealthy or more well-to-do city life, and the contrast of that within China. A lot of political things happening within this movie, a lot of political things going on in it. I thought it was a really good film. I think Zhang Yimou is a really masterful filmmaker. Um, I mean, his work is really just top notch. And his political stuff that he has to say is really prevalent, really important. Not only I think for China, but I just think the world over when it comes to the society in which we live in and how it is doesn't do the best job of fostering or caring for children when it comes to poverty, when it comes to lack of necessities, lack of access to education, lack of access to food, stuff like that. So the
Yeah.
film is really a macro in that regard. Really good film, not one less. I thought it maybe could have used a better title because that title's kind of open ended, but I
Hmm.
think it is the same title as a book, or maybe not. I think the book has a different title, but it is based off of a novel that came out in 1997. So if you have that big box set, and if you got the other release that they've already put out by Zhang Yimou, yeah, this is a no brainer to get. It really is.
Yeah. All right. Tell me about Leap.
Well, Leap is actually coincidentally the one I did not get to watch,
Okay.
but I did know of it. Initially, I thought it was a documentary, and it's not. It's a narrative film about the Chinese Olympic volleyball team from like 1981 to 2016.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a
Pretty
biopic
recent.
history
Yeah. Pretty recent sports film from them.
film that
Yeah.
spans decades, really. Kind of shows like where they were to where they've gotten to now and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a what it came out in 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sports film. I'm
Hey, you
assuming
don't hear a lot of sports films,
not
that
about
are just
volleyball.
about
Not about
volleyball. That's
volleyball.
what I'm saying. Yeah. That's cool. I mean, yeah, I definitely need to look into that, but yeah, didn't get a chance to try to find out where I could watch that one. Um, and the other one I didn't watch was, and I know you watched, is Damage.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Here we
Okay,
go.
calm down. Yeah, don't go too crazy because we need to get done soon.
I know. I'm not gonna say it's not a great film,
Oh
despite
man,
the fact that it's got great actors in it. Jeremy Irons, Juliette Binoche. Um, I think one of the actresses, yeah, the actresses that plays um uh Jeremy Irons' wife, Miranda Richardson, nominated for an Academy Award. Actually, I think Best Supporting Actress. I think really for one scene, one amazing scene that she's in.
yeah,
And the movie's directed by Louis Malle, who we
mm-hmm.
were just talking about Criterion. There's Louis Malle is in the Criterion collection a couple of times over with several of his films like Vanya on 42nd Street, Murmur of the Heart is another one that I remember. Au revoir les enfants is another one that's in there. My Dinner with Andre, of
Yeah,
course. But yeah, this is directed by Louis Malle, came out in 1992, and it's supposed to be an erotic thriller.
okay,
The problem is I didn't really feel the eroticism of it all.
hmm.
So this is, I'm pretty sure it's based on a novel, based on a book. Don't quote me on that. So Jeremy Irons' character is he's like a member of parliament. So well-to-do guy. He ends up starting an affair with his son's girlfriend, portrayed by Juliette Binoche. And the whole thing is they have to keep it under wraps and keep it obviously, you know, secret because it would be a huge scandal, destroy his family, et cetera, et cetera. You know, you can kind of deduce that. The problem I have with the film is I don't like I don't buy their connection, and I
Mhm.
didn't quite get on the level where, like, he's so enrapturously obsessed with Juliette Binoche's character that I was just like, I didn't quite feel that connection. I didn't quite feel like I was wondering, like, why? What is it about this person that you just and the problem for me is that it happened instantly. It's not one of those slow growing things. It's not a romance. It's not something that you build up towards to you get to a climactic point. It's like he saw her instantly and was instantly obsessed with her. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're gonna get no building blocks
You talking
foundation.
about?
We're just
That's like that's half the love stories from the classic movies you love.
I guess, but I mean, but this is like but when I mean, like, obsessed, I mean, like, there's a sequence where he goes to another country, rents a hotel room that's across the way from where she's staying just to stare at her through the window.
Oh, Juliette
That's
Binoche
a
is
that's
a beautiful woman.
very true, understandably so. Also, the, uh the sex scenes in the film, I don't know if they're supposed to be intentionally funny, but some of them
Oh,
very much
no.
are, to the
Oh,
point where I'm
no.
like, "This is a little ridiculous."
Oh,
I mean,
no, that's
everybody
never
does their
good.
own sexual things in their own way. Obviously, everybody gets off in all their different ways, but I'm watching it, I'm like, "That looks like a fake scene in a movie, as opposed to, like, an erotic scene,
Oh, no.
you know, in an adult film or something like that, or whatever the case may be." Um Yeah, and there's something that happens, like, I don't wanna give anything away, but there's something that happens later on that I'm like, "Really? That's what we're doing with this?" It's the film for a film that's build up or has this type of premise, secret affair, sexual encounters, I would've wish I felt more heat with the film, but it felt kind of bland given that premise, which is unfortunate because of who is in the film.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who directed it and who's behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So, that's Damage. Also, that's not a great title. I guess it's more literal like, "This is going to damage his life." But what is actually a really good film,
Yeah.
and I think we both got to see it, is My Summer of Love.
Yes. Really love this movie. Another kind of coming of age
Mm,
sexual awakening type of film.
indeed.
And in this one we have a young girl who I believe is played. Her name's Mona. Uh, she's played by Natalie Press, and she comes across a kind of more upper class girl played by Emily Blunt. And so yeah, so Mona is kind of from like a, you know, lower class family that she's living with her brother, um, and her brother's like kind of like a
A born-again Christian.
well, yeah, he's a little all over
Trying
the
to be.
place. He's somebody that was an alcoholic who was known for being kind of a hothead and been in jail, and then now he's like out of jail and he's trying to like change his life. And they literally live in like a bar, that they convert. You know, upstairs is where they live, but then he starts at the beginning of the story. He starts to convert the bar into like a church, a temple, and so you know she's dealing with all of that stuff with her brother, kind of not being him, what she considers being himself. And so she kind of strays away, and in getting away from the home life, she runs into Emily Blunt's character and kind of falls in love. And they so yeah, it's I don't, you know, there's minutiae to the story we don't want to give away, but um it's a film that really digs deep into that innocence of a
Mm,
first love, but also deals with how fragile that can be, and also how, you know, how easily people can be you know, how
manipulated.
manipulated when with that innocence, you know, like people are not always you know, looking at people in the same way as maybe they think that the other, you know, it's it's sometimes we can be blinded by our own, love and our own viewpoint of this of a person, and it really kind of is a movie of its moment. Like it's not, it's just a really like kind of like sweet at times, but also serious at times kind of love story. And I just really enjoyed it. And I can't wait to watch it in a more, the, the, the one when I watched it wasn't too bad, but I'd like to see this cleaned up a little bit. It's got it, uh, I'm not even gonna say his name. I used to be able to say his name, Palowski. Um, um, beautiful. He shot a lot of beautiful films, especially Cold War.
Mm.
Um, just really love that movie and another love story. And
I
yeah,
totally agree. I think it's a great coming of age film about the the innocence of young love, of adolescence, really, of just not even adolescence, because these are both older kind of, you know like kind of late teens or mid-teens type of age realm,
yeah,
and kind of the naivete of that existence, and just the way in which, we perceive the world at that time. Our world is very, very small, and we're not used to a kind of a lot of the maybe not harshness of it, but we're not used to kind of a lot of more nuance when it comes to human interactions, really. You're kind of learning different things. Her brother, is portrayed by Patty Considine, who I'm pretty sure many people kind of know now, or probably have been well aware of. He's been a great actor for many, many years, but he was recently on the series House of the Dragon, and he was fantastic in that. But he's been in many other things. Kind of a career character actor. He was in Peaky Blinders. He was in Macbeth. Though I guess I'm the biggest fan of the Michael Fassbender Macbeth film from 2015.
jeez, you're
Um,
one of
I,
the few.
I'm one of the few who love that movie. Think about it often. He played Banquo in that film,
Yeah,
um, who was Macbeth's like kind of best friend there. But this is a really good film. The actress I wanted to make mention of, Natalie Press, because she looked familiar to me while I was watching it. And it turns out she was in a short film a few years before this, called Wasp, that was directed by Andrea Arnold. And I just remember her from that. That is actually, I think, on the Criterion release of her film Fish Tank. I think that's one of the extra features on there. So if you have that, um, you have access to it. If not, I think it's online or whatever. I just remember her being in that. Yeah, that came out in 2003. So this movie came out in 2004. So it was right before that. And she's playing kind of a similar type character, but someone who's been thrusted into a mature situation in a very early stage in her life, being a young mother and trying to kind of balance the life of being a young mother as well as being a young person. And how does one do that? For a film that came out in 2003, it's very, very prevalent to today as well, where
yeah,
you see a lot of young people having children much early on in life due to whatever the circumstances may be. But yeah, My Summer of Love is very, very, very good. Paul Lukowski, like I said earlier, probably directed two of the best international films I've seen in the last decade: Cold War and Ida or Ida. I still don't know how to pronounce it, but Ida is an astonishing film that I've often compared to, if Ingmar Bergman directed a film in modern times, it would be that film. Like it has that aesthetic to it. And even Cold War has very much that aesthetic to it as well, and that feeling and that vibe. Incredible, incredible director. Um, yeah, I didn't realize that he's been directing for actually a very long time, and I just kind of discovered his work more recently.
yeah.
Uh,
I have his other film, Woman in the Filth.
mm,
It's got Ethan Hawke in it. Probably his lesser film of all his films, feature film work, but
yeah, because he hasn't
yeah,
done a film since Cold War, but I think there's some.
he's got something in the works, I
Yeah,
believe.
I think there's one upcoming called The Island that's in pre-production.
Oh man, he's
That's
remaking
got
The Island, the Michael Bay movie.
I don't know, it's got Rooney Mara and Joaquin Phoenix in it, so
Well, that's
at
something
least that's
there.
what IMDb says.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple decides to turn their backs on civilization to build their private paradise on a desert island. Oh, who doesn't want to?
Yeah.
However, a millionaire passing through the island makes them a sensation, making a European countess want to take over their island. Damn
Hmm.
rich people always want to commercialize things.
Hmm. Weird.
Can't just leave me alone on my deserted island.
Yeah. But this doesn't unfortunately doesn't have a lot of features on it.
Mm,
I'm seeing an audio commentary. I don't know if that's I don't think it's probably not new. I'm assuming
maybe
it's
not
coming from
new.
a previous release, but some deleted scenes, B-roll stuff, cast and crew interviews. So a little bit there, but not a lot. But I really just want this movie. Because
Yeah, I kind of want to own it.
this is a worldwide debut on Blu-ray. So um yeah, that's the imprint slate for June. Really solid month.
Yeah, overall,
I
a really well, like there's not like a misbeat in here, really.
No, these are
Even the one
all
I didn't
worse.
see, I wouldn't discount it.
Well, you didn't like Damage.
Well, I didn't like Damage. Yeah, that's true. All right.
Yeah,
Thank you for
there is
correcting
one
me.
misstep, but somebody probably likes that movie. So
Yeah, what's interesting for Damage for me is that it's not even it's not bad. It's just kind of underwhelming.
yeah,
Um,
for who was involved, you probably were expecting it to be a little more.
even
Yeah,
my letterbox rating, I think was a little higher because Miranda Richardson does have like one scene that's just like incredibly biting.
yeah,
Um, that it's like damn, like that's a really damn good scene, damn good line reading here. And that kind of bumped up the movie for me. I'm like, yeah, finally something just
dang, something
fucking just
happened.
to yeah, just to dive into.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, but overall solid slate.
yeah,
But I
yeah.
think that's it. Isn't that everything?
That's it, man. That's it for this week. And like I said before, once again, please go check out our. If you didn't hear it on here, we do have the video of our interview with Alexandra Heller-Nicholas. I said Alexandra Heller-Nicholas
Yeah.
over on our YouTube channel. And like I said, sorry about the glitches. Our technical difficulties that kind of made that end abruptly, but you still got a good amount of stuff there to listen to. And please go rate and review everything we got going on, whether it's on our YouTube channel or our where our audio is. Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06 as well as our YouTube channel Chasing Labels.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can find me at the other Chasing Labels pages, whether it be our Instagram, Twitter. You can find me at the my letterboxd at Stephen Billings. You can find the audio for the podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other places. Thanks again for listening. And hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.